A.
For a short hike. Before we begin, he won't be needed for this. I first played a short hike when it went up for free on Epic Games back during, oh my, March of 2020. What an unremarkable period of history that was! But I loved it so much I ended up buying this really big collector's edition from Super Rare Games, and now that's my go-to version. You boot up the game and already you're put at ease. A very small sunrise is shown to you, as if to say it's the start of a new day, and you can do whatever you want with it. The title screen shows a car driving down a road with an island in the background. After starting a new game, you'll wake up on that same Hawk Peak island, with your Aunt May patiently waiting next to a fire. Immediately, it's your choice what you do next. You can run around, jump, swim, learn how to glide, learn how to glide, learn how to glide a third time, just keep on learning how to glide. If you talk to your aunt, you'll learn the overarching goal of the game is to head to the peak of the mountain to get cell phone reception, as the player character Claire has been anxiously waiting for a phone call. Walking around the island, you'll find all sorts of things you can interact with and pick up, cute little animal characters to talk to, and eventually the soundtrack will kick in, fully reclining you into the Sunday afternoon iced tea that is a short hike. That right there is what's so incredible about a short hike to me, because when a game pitches to me an open world with lots of stuff to do and no clear guidance, simultaneously my eyes glaze over and my spine stiffens with stress. Games that are giant task burritos that spread in every direction cause me to lose interest really quickly, but also flare up some anxiety-fueled task completion gland in my brain.
Your spleenus.
Yes, my spleenus. It's a mix I do my best not to stir. But a short hike is just so small and concise and relaxed and simple and, normal. It doesn't have a fantasy world layered on top. You're not role-playing a druid. You're not in a dystopian cyberpunk city. Your ultimate goal is cell phone reception. What's more relatable? As you go along, collecting money, picking up sticks, and pocketing seashells, you'll find some golden feathers. As far as video game MacGuffins go, golden feathers are among the best there is because Claire's stamina directly corresponds to the number of golden feathers she's holding, and this isn't some convoluted exchange rate or anything. Once you pick up a golden feather, you can instantly run longer, climb further, and fly higher. And the flight in this game is just so fluid and buttery. Doing a normal glide is slow and easy to manage. You can dive and gain some serious speed, and doing a turn like this lets you do some wide banks. Plus, anytime you're in the air, the soundtrack gains an extra layer of gentle strings, granting this additional sense of unconstrained exploration. Flying around the island, you'll find lots of stuff to do. Shovels let you dig buried treasure, the fishing pole lets you catch fish, and the bucket lets you grow bounce pad plants. The typical goal of all this, and more, is to get more golden feathers, but thoroughly mixed in are fun character interactions and other little bonuses. Speaking of characters, the writing in this game is also very well done. The way dialogue appears is very similar to an instant messenger app like in Discord or Skype. You know how people will often type not sentences but sentence fragments and then send multiple messages even though just one could have worked? A short hike does that, but with its dialogue boxes. And where it might be a bit annoying at first, it manages to be instantly relatable as well. Because when you see a series of Discord messages organized like, "Hey man, just saw that movie. It was, really good." Personally, I read it in my head as though the speaker is pausing between each message and thinking of what they'd like to say next. It's not as though there's a comma between each message, but an ellipsis wouldn't work either, you know? It's something different. And beyond that, the actual dialogue in a short hike is also very frank and normal. That's not to say it's bad, I mean it's neither romanticized nor sterilized. Since the player character Claire is just a visitor, her first interactions with most characters are often between strangers, and they very much have that sensation of awkward and stiffness. But as you continue playing, it really does become more apparent how much more comfortable Claire gets with people. I like how the kids are little gremlins who are loud and unfiltered and don't always make sense. The park ranger is just so jazzed about how his merchandise is selling out, and the Rock Climbers Association member is so viciously dedicated. After enjoying all of this relaxation and freedom, a short hike doesn't forget to have a little bit of challenge. It is a video game after all. As you get higher on the mountain, the climate gets cold enough to freeze your golden feathers solid, which means they'll no longer regenerate normally. You'll have to warm yourself up at a campfire or at a natural hot spring. Suddenly, how you manage your golden feathers becomes important, and you have to pay attention to when you flap your wings, when you press the sprint button, or when you instinctively climb up walls. Your normal movements are suddenly a question of efficiency. Is it better to fly up or climb up this wall? You can power through this area in a number of ways, and it's pretty brief too, but it's still such an interesting change of pace from the rest of the game. Plus, the reward for getting to the peak, aside from finishing the story, is that you can fly all the way back down, watching old friends come into view one by one, all while listening to new music. And after that, you can run around collecting more golden feathers so you can fly even better than before, effectively earning your own god mode. And there are little hats you can find! I mentioned earlier about the Super Rare Games Collector's Edition, and where other Collector's Editions come with some stickers and a folded up poster or something, A Short Hike really is enhanced as an experience with this big box of goodies. There are 2 fold-out topographical maps in the style of hiking brochures, and there's a bunch of world-building text about Hawk Peak Island and its landmarks. The developer once shared on Twitter how he made the map by putting a shader over the entire island. These maps aren't all that necessary, since the game flows just fine without one, but it does go an extra mile in making Hawk Peak feel like an actual place you could go to someday. There's also this CD soundtrack from Mark Sparling. What's great about this edition of the soundtrack is that it includes a bunch of songs that weren't in the game, including Game Boy style 8-bit remixes of songs. This here is the version of the soundtrack I listen to while driving. It's the perfect accompaniment for going on adventures or getting a quick bite. And best of all, there's this guidebook full of information about Hawk Peak Island. You can read all about the animals and the fish, see these beautiful illustrations, and read these really thorough handwritten notes from Claire about her trip around the island. A lot of these notes will follow things you'll do in your own playthrough, and will serve as helpful reminders of things like controls and what specific characters can help you with. It's such a cute touch. Think about how old game manuals have those empty notes pages in the back. How much more interesting would those pages be if they were filled? It's like popping in a used game cartridge and there's already a save file. There is so much love poured into A Short Hike, and it's an honor to be a part of even a portion of it. This is just such a perfect, genuine, tiny little game. There are some really great videos with the developer and the composer about how they made their respective parts of the game and why they went in the directions they did. I recommend watching these videos. Adam Robinson Yu mentioned how he made A Short Hike so he could take a break from another long-term project he was struggling with, and I think that's the perfect way to enjoy a short hike nowadays. If you're in the middle of something that's giving you some trouble, A Short Hike is a very small, very concentrated dose of joy, able to rejuvenate both body and mind. And it's there when you need it for picking up later, since there's lots of obscure little things to do. I, for one, will always be up for a game of beach stickball.
B. For
the Burnout series of games. They are very similar.
Sure, the Burnout series adapts the standard bones, skin, and tendons of racing games in which you pick a fast car, drive fast, drift fast, and boost fast. You gotta be, do, drive, and live faster than your opponents to receive new tracks, new cars, and new modes to play. But Burnout goes a bit further with this concept by adding something no one should try at home.
Crashing. Crashing can have many different effects depending on which game you're playing. In one installment, crashing into opponents adds to and fills a boost meter. In another, you can crash into traffic heading in your same direction to launch it at enemies to cause them to crash. In yet another, you launch a vehicle off a ramp or into a pile of parked vehicles to cause the most amount of damage. It's visceral, it's loud, it's breathtaking, above all, it's fun.
And hilarious. There are no moments in this game where you aren't shifting between high-octane, high-stress, high-speed driving down tight roads and corridors, attempting to shove enemies into walls and traffic, and dumbfounded hilarity as you watch vehicles scrunch into piles of tinfoil as they, and you, meet walls, pillars, environments, and other vehicles. Every game will throw you into this furious rush of both moods while you race through areas that might as well be blurs as you boost past them at supercar speeds.
If you have trouble striking this balance, you can participate in the various minigame type modes dispensed throughout the series, like Crash Mode, which is exactly what it sounds like, crashing. Pick any of the super fast cars you've unlocked, or a taco truck, or a bus, and launch yourself into a 3-way, 4-way, 4-way intersection to cause the most damage you can. Throw yourself into a suspended highway. This tunnel highway needs something. It's you! Smashing through it!
Or any of the variations of road rage and single lap dashes that have you dodging or actively crashing into traffic to rack up points and boost. Each of these races and all the carnage will lead to prizes such as cars and courses and cars, which means there's no shortage of new speeds to reach and places to reach them.
The gameplay is instantly addictive, and you can stop whenever you want, because races, side missions, and minigames are able to be completed in short order. It's not all mindless mayhem. There are actual goals to shoot for and unlockables to get, which makes this series a mainstay for both of us.
I'm kind of having trouble putting this game down while we're recording footage. It's just so fun!
You have to. There's 24 more of these we have to do. Maybe if we have more time.
I can stop when I want to!
I have an idea.
You crashed me into a wall!
It doesn't exactly stop you in these games, you know.
Oh, yeah.
C. For Cube World.
I'm gonna be honest here, upon a return trip to Cube World, I was rather unimpressed with the content I returned to find. This is definitely due to the time I have spent away from Cube World's community as a whole. I'll see the developer, who is superhuman for taking on this game's development solo, holy shit, post sometimes, but beyond that, I haven't touched this game since it came out in 2019, after 6 years of the alpha. Fun as it was to return to, I needed a lot of help being reacquainted with the gameplay, the combat, controls, the map, and Cube World itself. Andy is way more involved than I ever will be and has a lot more to say. So I'm gonna let him speak for a while. I'll probably chime in here and there and I'll do the outro, but I don't have much more to say than this. Andy, the floor is yours.
Gee, thanks. Real BRO bro move, that is. Whatever. Here we go. I bought the Cube World Alpha version in that tight window back in July 2013. That also means I was invited into the closed beta for the game's official Steam release in September 2019. So basically, that means I'm cooler than you. Back when all we had was the alpha version and the occasional blog posts, I remember being so entranced by Cube World. I would read the official site detailing the game's roadmap, grind for equipment using different world seeds, and try to memorize the pet food combinations. It really did feel like an RPG with just enough to work while not having too many rules or obligations to weigh you down. This game was actually how I discovered SoundCloud. That's right, this game was my first check out my SoundCloud. I'd go to the account, cue the music, and then play Cube World for a while, since the alpha didn't have music included. Imagine my surprise when this music played in the final game. Speaking of the final release, I can still so clearly remember when the developer Wale suddenly tweeted out that Cube World was going to be released. How quickly that message got picked up and shared around, how people were replaying that trailer and dissecting it for details, how surreal it was to see an official Steam page for the legendary Cube World. It felt like anything was possible. Shame the next year was 2020, huh? Anyway, Cube World was the first open-world game I remember playing. Similar to other gigantic open-ended games that feature randomly generated exploration at the time, it didn't feature much in the way of explanations or tutorials, and so it was pretty difficult to get into without a fan wiki or outside assistance. But during that time, it was just so mysterious. I remember walking up to the passive animals in the game and just holding out every item in my inventory, wondering if they did anything, and suddenly that animal would become my pet. Then I would forget which item I was holding, so I didn't even learn anything. But Cube World is also a difficult game when you're first starting out. Enemies can kill you swiftly, and it's easy to accidentally run out of healing items. Everything from money to your first level up has to be earned. But after you make it past that initial level 1 hump, Cube World can be a relaxing game. You can fall into this loop of infinite exploration and infinite growth, constantly discovering new ways to become stronger. You start out destroying cotton plants and end up making your weapon a giant toothpick. Your overall goal is to become more efficient and effective so that you can continue adventuring more comfortably. That adventure takes place in an impossibly huge world made up of voxels and loads of biomes. Dotted throughout are various structures, resources to gather, and enemies to challenge. Something I always appreciated is how the creatures that wander around aren't always hostile. They can either be the passive animals, like I mentioned before, or parties of adventurers just like you. It's often a coin flip as to whether these guys are friendly or not, and that brief moment of tension is exactly like meeting a stranger. If they're helpful, you can have them fight against nearby enemies and mooch off of their work. And that can help make the early game pass by a little more quickly. When you start the game up, you choose your character class of the 4 available, but after that you can choose one of the specialty branches to decide how you'd like to expand your character's abilities. And even beyond that, every class has multiple weapon types that change the basics of how that character fights. My favorite build has always been a longsword rogue assassin, since you get an ability where you can dash forward super quickly, piercing through one enemy and into the next. It's like you're carving your way to the front of an autograph signing. All of that is an excellent way to build a party, especially considering Cube World is multiplayer. It's relatively simple to host your own world and get people to connect to your game. Back when the alpha was more popular, people would put together gigantic servers filled with over 100 players. You could hop in and hop out whenever, party up with total strangers, and grind levels super easily. But even without that many people, it's fun enough to just have a couple players together to tag team some rock monsters. The alpha version was also the first game I modded. There's this program called CWME, or Cube World Model Editor, that could dump and overwrite all of the voxel models in Cube World. The changes would be entirely client-side, so only you would see them, and you could overwrite any model. You could even see models that weren't supposed to be in the game yet. So of course, I just made every longsword into master swords, and after that I expanded into stuff like the Bigoron sword, the Locomo and Phantom swords, changed the money into rupees, made the mushrooms into super mushrooms. I went a bit crazy. In particular, I remember being pretty proud of myself for the turtle. The turtle pet is one you can ride, but it attacks by rapidly spinning around for a while. So I thought, I gotta make that into the spinner from Twilight Princess. And so I did. Now I get 1,000 times more use out of the spinner than Link ever did. Now that some time has passed since the official release on Steam, and we've had the announcement of Cube World Omega, I find myself experiencing a similar excitement to what I had back during the alpha version. Every so often, the bug will bite me again, leaving an itch that needs to be scratched. I'll need to look over the screenshots again, rewatch trailers, reread blog posts. I'll play both versions of Cube World and wistfully look around, wondering what'll be next. In the age of the internet and indie games, I follow a lot of game developers and the progress of lots of projects, but I don't think I've ever been as emotionally invested in a game's development as I have been in Cube Worlds. It's taught me that just because something is old doesn't mean it's inferior, and just because something has changed doesn't mean it's decayed.
Okay, there has to be a way to bring those models into the full release game, or even Omega, because I want that Bigoron sword. Now then.
D.
4.
Drawn to life.
Ooh, I see a wall of text to read, so I'm just gonna...
Can't get out that way.
Drawn to life. If you've ever heard about Drawn to Life, it was probably about the story. And yeah, it goes places. But to be honest, although I think that's pretty cool, it didn't really resonate with me as much as the main gimmick of the game did. Drawing your own hero. Drawn to Life is a competent little platformer on the DS. It's not especially complicated, but it's not too simple either. The main draw really is whenever the game pauses to tell you that something is missing, and you, the person holding a stylus and a touchscreen, needs to fill it in. Playing this game was the first time I felt even vaguely involved in a production. I know I wasn't actually making a game or whatever, but it was still cool to see. I could draw up an asset, click done, and see it immediately working in the game. Back when I played this the first time and it told me to make a player character, I had no idea what to make, so I just did my best to draw the character on the box art, because I thought he was cool. I can confirm that, as an adult artist, I still very much suffer the difficulty of not being able to create original characters at a moment's notice. Doing interpretations and reimaginings of existing characters has always been so much easier for me, and I've never been able to figure out why. Weirdly, Drawn to Life sorta kinda prepared me for what it's like to work on a production. It's a bit like the director is asking you to fill in a placeholder. Here's a mock-up of what it's supposed to do in-engine. Here's the maximum size the asset can be. Here's the palette we want you to use, so forth and so on. You take these instructions and work within them however you want. Plus, there's the fact that you're drawing all of this on a DS. That's not to say it's uncomfortable exactly. After all, this was the series of systems that had Flipnote, but more that all the drawings you make will get shrunken down and compressed to the point of being slightly unrecognizable. If you want to make it look good, you have to be clever. Just like real work! Something I always thought was elegant about Drawn to Life was how it indicated your character's health by causing your drawing to get shaved away piece by piece. It motivates me to heal up my character as soon as possible. I want my creation to be whole! Plus, it's always freaky when your character loses their legs and it reveals these skinny, flesh-colored limbs just dangling in the breeze. There are comparable games out there that prioritize the player's imagination in order to feed the gameplay loop. Minecraft's creative mode comes to mind. Scribblenauts is definitely similar in a way. But I don't know, there's just something about how Drawn to Life is a complete intentional narrative from beginning to end, but lets the player make their mark here and there that makes it more personal and memorable. Plus, as player avatars in games get more and more advanced with all these sliders and options, surely the ultimate evolution is simply drawing your own character. Drawn to Life was ahead of the curve.
Ha! Curve. Ah.
E.
4.
Evil West. Before you start, did you lock me in here?
Just because I can leave during your long rants about your passions for these games doesn't mean you can.
But all you gave me is chime-ins and whatever. Begin.
Evil West. While this game isn't a particularly deep or gripping one, the one thing it does do well that really caught me off guard was the combat. You see, I was already interested in the game because of the aesthetic alone. Vampires and cowboys, the world's two most combative forms of media.
According to what?
The science of combative media.
Go on.
One has guns, the other has teeth, and they fight each other. Like I said, the story isn't award-worthy, but it does act as a bridge between the best thing the game lets you do: punch stuff. Punch stuff a lot. Kick stuff too, but the punching is what the game does the best. Most abilities help you punch more, or harder, or faster, or stronger, and then you just have a combo that doesn't break because you already have an 8-hit combo. Then you learn an electric dash that lets you move to another enemy in an instant and continue punching. Then you learn takedown moves that let you rip enemies in half, throw them at each other, or more. It's fluid, it's visceral, it feels like enemies are made of cake, and each punch rips away another chunk of their delicious insides, which perform a fusion dance when more than one is on the field. Then they jettison toward you for easy collection.
I remember panicking the first time these moved toward us because the health pickup grew so much in size, it looked like a giant red rock that aimed to kill us. Kinda funny.
Most abilities in this game that aren't punching are gateways to allow you to punch. Shoot enemies in their weak spots with your various guns to knock them to the ground. Kick them while they're performing their stronger attacks to stun them. Pull enemies toward you that you can't reach. Evil West is so confident in your fists, most things are centered around you being able to consistently use them to fuck everything. Your only real obstacle to teaching everything how many knuckles you have are bosses, because they do not react well to being punched. Most enemies will succumb to your combo, becoming too stunned to move while you find every organ, every muscle, every tendon they have and put your trademark Rentier fist on it. I seriously cannot get over how much fun the combat is.
It is quite punchy.
No one is allowed to get mad at him for that pun. Sure, you can shoot things, blow things up, kick things, but punching is your first and best form of combat and animation. You may see the same combination of fists every time you see an enemy, but it never gets old. Your jolly chuckle of "I'm so much stronger than you" may dwindle during your first few fights, but as bigger things that can take more hits are introduced, your jaunty laugh will become a determined giggle as you trounce enemy hordes armed with everything but opting to fist them instead.
Don't say it like that.
It's so funny though! Fine. I've said it about 7 times, but I'll say it again. The combat in this game is some of the most fun you can have on a Sony system. And if you want to give your PS5 something to do while it waits anxiously for that treasured 4th exclusive title, play it on here. The punches feel more impactful, the bits you strike off each enemy are more visceral, and it's just an overall improved experience. This is a game I really hope gets a sequel or some DLC just so I can fist-to-fuck more things.
And on that really awful note, James is done.
F. For Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion. Now I know what you're thinking. There's no F's in Final Fantasy. And you're right, we agree, but this is the best game with an F in it we could find, and it won't be the last time we stretch the rules. Now, Fantasy Crisis VII Reunion Core Final. While Andy and I are not much for the Final Fantasy series of games, I have found myself gravitating toward the spin-offs and side stories Square Enix decides to expand their stories into. Things like Stranger of Paradise, and of course, Crisis Core. I had never owned the original, but when the remaster, Reunion, was announced, I knew 2 things about the game. 1, it had gambling in it as a main mechanic, and 2, it may help explain why Final Fantasy VII is so popular to someone who doesn't get it.
Really? Those were the 2 things you knew of it.
Yes, you had only ever told me about the gambling, and I'm very out of the loop as to why 7 is so popular. I can safely say the gambling was 100% correct. It is the main mechanic of combat, most abilities, summoning things, leveling up, acquiring boosts in battle, and can decide your win-loss ratio in a matter of moments. I'm rather enamored with Final Crisis Reunion Fantasy Core Reunion simply because of how the gambling was factored in. Every battle was no longer a button-mashing escapade that tested the limits of my Switch controller, they became high-stakes games of risk and reward, the latter happening more often than not. I became engrossed in the world the game takes place because I would seek out every enemy, every battle, everything that looked at me with doubt or anger, because it meant the slots were a-spinning up and it was time to execute some combos.
Okay, and did it help you understand why Final Fantasy VII is so popular?
Not in the least. The story is a mass of questions and confusion, but Square Enix and fans of the several series the company has created are fans of the confusion and convolution, and that's okay. I don't understand it, but I'm not mad because the combat and side quests between bits of "why the hell is this happening?" were definitely worth not understanding anything. Fantasy Reunion Crisis Core Final is a game that is on my short list of games to return to in my downtime between releases or on car rides. It rides that list with titles such as Sushi Striker and Hyrule Warriors because you can just pick it up and flow right back into the simple, awesome, and delightful controls that make the game a joy to play. I knew close to nothing of this game before playing it, and it was an absolute joy to try a first time. It really makes me wish for a sequel or a future Final Fantasy game to adopt the slot system so I can have this excellent mechanic return in the future.
I can't tell if this is a cry for help or an admission of addiction.
Why does my gambling addiction have to fashion into a game heavily focused on gambling, increasing your odds for better rewards and stronger attacks, and encourage side quest exploration to add more characters to your slots to increase the varied effects that happen? Oh. Well, it might tickle my gamble organ.
Your spleenus.
Yeah, my spleenus, in a way I can't explain accurately except I enjoy the risk-reward system of gambling in video games, and this is the first RPG I played that does it well enough that I would consider a return trip. Likely the only one that does it right. It's also a fun game. I enjoyed my time playing through it even if I didn't understand a lick of story. Still a great time.
G.
For...
Gone Home.
Speaking of home, I'm not there right now, and it looks like I'm needed there.
Everyone like how he can just leave during my days? Y'all enjoying that? I hope I get to do that to him one of these days. Alright, Gone Home. Name a video game. Go on, I dare you. Statistically speaking, that game has combat. It might even have points or a score, maybe some kind of currency, probably a win or loss state, and might phrase that loss as death. Heck, it's likely that you can jump. Gone Home has none of that. There is no combat or points or money or jumping. Nothing. Gone Home really isn't like other games. Alright, now I say that, but you're probably looking at this footage and thinking to yourself, oh, it's a walking simulator. And okay, fine, it is a game where you walk around an environment and that's about it. That might be a turnoff for a lot of people, but I truly believe that Gone Home is an incredible game. And along with that, I believe Gone Home is a tantamount example of what storytelling in a video game is capable of. Gone Home is an expertly crafted game specifically because it couldn't be done any other way. It had to be a video game. Think of your favorite video game narrative. Could it theoretically be told through a movie or a book or a radio drama? Whether or not it could be done better, could it at least get the point across? Gone Home's story could not be done any other way. The game begins with you listening to a voice message because you're in 1995 when making phone calls wasn't such a paralyzing possibility. As the message concludes, you're placed into gameplay, locked outside of a large mansion during a heavy rainstorm. Nobody is around. It's up to you to figure everything else out. You have the somewhat linear main story of what happened to the character Sam over the past couple years. The meat of Gone Home is what accompanies that tale, as everything you'll find feeds into it in some way. There exists loads of other characters, plot threads, and details, but none of it is handed to the player. In order to gain a full understanding of what's going on, the player has to snoop through an abandoned mansion full of books, handwritten notes, and hidden passageways. All the while, a roaring thunderstorm pounds the windows, creepy sounds infect the walls, and lights flicker in the dim halls. Maybe you're not actually alone. The only way to gain an understanding of your surroundings is if you seek it out. If you want to read that note, you have to pick it up and decipher it. But it's not just a random note in the middle of a giant house. What's the context of it? Who wrote it and when or why? It doesn't exist in a vacuum separate from all other possibilities. If you want to know why it's there and what it means, you need to keep learning. That's why Gone Home had to be a video game in order to work. It requires player participation. In any other form of media, like a show or a movie, the audience can sit back and allow the story to simply happen. Time will pass, the story will be told, and a conclusion will occur. In a video game, an ending has to be reached, but in Gone Home, the ending has to be gathered together. And it's not just a mess of plot threads thrown at a wall like some flashy spaghetti dish. Gone Home's story is grounded and relatable. It's about adolescence and transformation, and how as time passes, it doesn't always feel fair. You'll find punk rock music tapes, evidence of hair dye, and the fallout of fights with parents. There were multiple times when I would find or listen to something in the house and just stop to think for a minute. I'm really doing my best to talk about it without spoiling it, because I do think it should be experienced firsthand, because that's what it requires. First-hand, active participation. During my first playthrough, I wanted to get acquainted with the house's layout as best as possible, and so I absorbed as many details as I could. I picked up every object, opened every drawer, went into every room. I was snoopier than a realtor. But after a while, I turned around and realized the house I was leaving behind me was unrecognizable from the house I was walking into. Everything had moved and shifted entirely because my presence had interrupted the tranquility of the house. That's what playing a game can feel like. You caused something to change. You could see it and feel it at the same time. What's great about returning to Gone Home nowadays is that the game offers a developer's commentary mode. In it, you can find these hovering Fulbright logo icons, which play voicemail messages left by various developers of the game, and they'll be placed next to relevant aspects of the environment or the story. All of the messages give context to their respective regions, and I think it's a brilliant way to handle a bonus feature, especially in a narrative-focused game. While replaying Gone Home for this footage you're watching, it really helps me to remember. If life ever gets you down, meow meow meow, meow meow meow, meow 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 meow, meow 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 meow, meow 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 meow, meow 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 wow, meow 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 meow, meow.
Turns out I was home the whole time. What an adventure I had. Anyway,
James, shut up. We know why we're here. We don't have to pretend today was about any other game. Our letter today is H for Hyper Light Drifter. Does this shock any of you?
shocks me a little.
I don't remember giving you permission to speak. Now get out. I can feel a lot of eyes on me right now. Andy's finally alone in a room, and he's just been told he can talk about Hyper Light Drifter for as long as he wants. He won't be interrupted, the subject won't change. It's the opportunity he's been begging for. You might as well have locked him in a candy store after closing time over Labor Day weekend. You know, I actually managed to find the first time I'd ever heard about Hyper Light Drifter. There was this message board, remember those, that I frequented where someone randomly posted the game's first trailer. It cast this spell on me that I couldn't shake. There was something about how the trailer showed just barely enough to get the point across, but also not very many concrete details. Right around the time when the game released, I had a health emergency. I fainted in the middle of class and an ambulance took me to the hospital. I had no energy, no appetite, and couldn't think straight. Most noticeably, my vision was completely blurred and sound of any kind sent a tectonic tremor through my skull. The doctors explained I was suffering a severe migraine, and I tried to tell them it wasn't a big deal since I've had headaches like this before. And then the conversation changed. I was properly diagnosed with chronic ocular migraines. I've had them since I was a kid. Without warning, I would notice a small portion of my vision turn to static. Then before long, that little bit of static would expand as though something were eating a hole through the sky. It progressively consumes the vision in both of my eyes until they're effectively vestigial organs. The air smells like aluminum foil, my energy and appetite abandon me, and my body feels like it's being compressed and melted. This would happen at literally any time, with an unpredictable frequency. I have a few memories of being in grade school and taking a test while being literally blind but not knowing how to tell anybody, so I just feel terrible for a while. I still go blind sometimes. My body still gives up on me, and it still bothers me a lot. The only difference now is that I take medication, which seems to help a bit despite the side effects. If you've heard anything about Hyper Light Drifter and its development, you've probably heard about the creative director Alex Preston's struggle with congenital heart disease. Obviously, I'm not in that same situation, but with the way Hyper Light Drifter is made and communicated to pertain to chronic illness overall and the pain that can come from underneath one's own skin, it always felt a little bit like the game is pointing at me and my migraines and saying, I get it. The player character, the Drifter, suffers from an unknown disease that seems to cause them a great deal of pain. Every so often they have a bloody coughing fit that clogs up the player's vision and inhibits their movement. They have hallucinations of a distorted, amorphous entity that consumes an inconsistent amount of space, but is always violent and loud. These moments are sudden and unplanned, and instill a feeling of insecurity and fear where once there was tranquility. To me, it's a lot like having a migraine. Just living life, going through the motions, and without warning, your body turns on you. Every time I replay this game, it manages to be different. In the first moments, you have to choose which region to explore first. Within all 3 regions are the 4 modules that can be found on the map, but that's not all there is. Every first-time drifter knows the brick wall that is this door. Because Hyperlight Drifter is so devilishly crafted and so deviously coy about all of its secrets, even the primary MacGuffins are secrets themselves. The map only tells you about 4, but there's more, and you can find these hot pink Doritos in any order. There's also the keys, which aren't like keys in other games. Doors open based on the number of keys that you have, and they can be found in any order. Finding a bunch of keys in one region makes locked doors in another region accessible, but every locked door requires a unique number of keys. Depending on what region you pick first, which module you find first, where you decide to branch off to first, your playthrough will be different than someone else's. There's also the money. These little chips combine together to make the money you spend on upgrades. I always thought it was cool how there's a finite, determined number of these chips in the entire game, so that each one feels special. Not a single one is random or encountered by chance. Each one is intentional. In fact, intentional is a great word to describe Hyperlight Drifter, because just as the game doesn't tell you about the spare modules in each region, it doesn't explicitly tell you about all of its secrets either, but it also doesn't totally leave you in the dark either. Anytime you come across a strange mark in the floor, an odd gap in space, or a trail of debris heading into a wall, chances are there's something hiding there. But Hyperlight Drifter is not solely a relaxing experience. The combat is stylish and vicious. There's a beautiful paradox in the brutality of your sword swings and the elegance of your dash. It's like a chainsaw wearing ballet slippers. Every upgrade boosts your brutality and enhances your elegance, and every gun you find only expands your options for dealing with rooms full of baddies. You can use the railgun to pierce through a Newton's cradle of skulls, or stick with the trusty pistol to try plinking. Something I love about the game is how the corpses of your kills stick around. There's something poetic about walking through the game's world and seeing all these nameless corpses and unidentifiable stains, and just adding to the pile. You're part of this world's history, speaking its language. Anyway, it's good that the combat is so good, because it's also brutal. It's pretty easy to get swept up in the raging rapids of battle and not have enough time to heal up, and there are lots of one-hit death puzzles around too. Thankfully though, you respawn at the last door you entered, with all your resources and enemy kills reset to that point in time, like it never even happened. I've gotten so much joy just thinking about Hyperlight Drifter. I've thought about this game while reading the art book, while listening to the soundtrack on vinyl, while staring at my posters, while wearing the merchandise, while dusting the statue, while massaging the plush, while holding the I Am 8-Bit Collector's Edition, which included this neon blue SNES cartridge that does literally nothing. There's so much in Hyperlight Drifter, and it means so much to me, I can hardly keep it to myself. So I'm gonna play it co-op. James, come back in here.
I
4
Iron Man!
Oh, there's a button I can press with my tongue.
And Andy got his wish. He can fly off while I do my thing. See, we're fair to each other during these. I see no reason to try and sell anyone actually playing, much less buying them, at least in the quantity I own, because they are not very good games. They have moments where they scratch the surface of being a serviceable Elseworlds lookalike version of what the movie could have done with the story, but beyond that they are stale, clunky, and hard to play. Although, playing a game that acted just like the movie it was based on would probably be more boring. It is fun to know Robert Downey Jr. did offer his voice for the role of Iron Man in these games, even though he sounds like the director decided he's not allowed to have emotion, smile, or say anything without his lips pursed the whole time.
Look at her. She's gorgeous.
There's still plenty of Stark weapons out there, and I'm gonna find them. You know what? I'll do a better job this time.
Alright, enough dunking on these games. Iron Man is our game today, not because of the game itself, but because it perpetuated the sickening disease Marvel infected us with back in 2008 called the MCU. Iron Man, the movie that began it all. I never understood the hype behind all these characters, their costumes, or why there was an R in the word skull, and I still don't for the most part, but this was my introduction into a Marvel character. I can't imagine what it must have been for someone who had gotten into this world before me, a crackly voiced 14-year-old back in 2008, but this was everything to me. The story, the characters, the fight scenes, the cool guy attitude that seemed to ooze off of Downey Jr. and into the Tony Stark character. Seriously, best casting in the universe. Iron Man is a fine film. I'm able to see it with my 30-year-old eyes and understand its flaws and shortcomings, but as a 14-year-old who is desperately trying to find his place in the world, figure out what he wants to do, and really likes building things out of yardsticks and aluminum tape, this movie was a lot of things. I'd go into that, but we're deep into the video by now. Andy would be tapping his foot, and we haven't gotten to the game. But Andy isn't here, and that's just it though. The game was a way of extending the infectious, overwhelming aspirations the movie suddenly placed on my shoulders. The world was changed forever after having watched Iron Man throw guys through walls, punch dudes into buildings, and tank a tank. or you're a fucking liar. I was absolutely stricken with the hype syndrome that has led many fans into this ravenous perfection-seeking mindset, where tiny changes in what they think is the way their favorite panel should appear on screen means the movie will be bad. I had it bad. I wanted to build my own Iron Man suit. I promise I did not get far. I am not an engineer, I am barely an artist, and back then there wasn't a snowball's chance in hell. But that didn't kill my hope or my love of the character. The movie inspired me to read and learn up. I bought, post-2008, Iron Man comics in collected volumes. I have several beautiful pieces of art in my home featuring many Iron Man characters. I used my adult money to buy these figures. Judge me, I don't care. Some of these are awesome, except the Guardians of the Galaxy group Build-A-Figure Iron Man. This one is cheap, ugly, and sucks. And I bought the game. And I bought the game. And I bought the game. And I bought the sequel. Iron Man the game, the sequel mean a lot to me. Yeah, they're extensions of fan service that I treasure deeply, and that's the only reason Andy agreed to let me put this here, but still, imagine being 14, seeing your first Marvel anything, it's fucking Iron Man, discovering there's a Wii game about it, and playing that. It would be like if Iron Man came out today and that Iron Man VR game came out around the same time. That would probably blow the same amount of minds this game did back in the day. Even touching these games again for footage really ignites the strong sense of nostalgia from back then. Walking into the theater and not knowing what to expect, but knowing my father and oldest brother were both pretty excited. Walking out of the theater with all my hair still standing on end, and getting in the car realizing that several hours of my life I never want back because nothing will ever be that divine, nor could it be. Until this thing called Infinity War happened.
J.
For
Jackbox Party Packs. Have you ever attended a gathering, be it in person or online, that simply lacked the ability to be funny on the spot, upstaged by a friend or grandparent a moment later, and be given the ability to play as a burping turd? If you've never asked yourself this question, then the ubiquity of the Jackbox Party Packs hasn't touched you yet, and you probably live under a rock. These games, 5 per pack, 10 packs in total, have become the standard way to break the ice with friends and strangers alike after their debut. With everyone glued to their phones, why not give them a chance to take a funny guess, try not to lie when given a specific scenario, or fill in a 3-line phrase they inevitably get wrong?
Jackbox is a series of games that can touch on most gaming niches and interests, from drawing your own answer, guessing games, Mad Lib type scenarios, and more. You may not excel in using your finger to draw a t-shirt design that goes head to head against other t-shirts, but that won't stop you from making hilarious names that are given to other competitors that they are now forced to use to describe their designs. It really is an all-inclusive experience that can draw on many different skill sets.
No matter how many you have gathered at the screen, anxiously awaiting the controller to press play, you'll have a crowd of players campaigning to have their favorites played and their least favorites avoided. Everybody has the games they gravitate toward in these packs. These games became extra vital during quarantine and social distancing, since the gameplay is pretty simple, has generous timers, and players could participate from just about any distance.
Mention playing Jackbox to your friends and watch their faces light up as they remember their own inside jokes from sessions past with family and friends, the excitement at being able to play Quiplash, TKO, Dictionarium, or more again, the possible frustration at having their own well-thought-out answer be upstaged by some word vomit that took very little thought. Jackbox Party Packs are a mixed bag of fun that 100% deserve every accolade they've been given over the years, and more. As Andy said, I can't imagine how invaluable these must have been when quarantine started, and the friendships that were strengthened and created through this.
He says, while fully aware we have a community of perpetually excited Jackbox players, phones at the ready to answer the party pack calls should we put one out there.
As long as we have them all here, how about we make a tier list of all the Jackbox games we've played?
Yes, everyone, blather round as we take part in this patently stupid idea that is sure to survive the internet.
That didn't feel forced.
It wasn't. Let's begin.
Party Pack 3.
Quiplash 2. S tier. Of course this is at the top. Too bad Last Lash sucks.
Guespionage. C tier. It's 50% fun.
Lower.
TKO. B tier. It takes forever and relies on the quality of drawings and prompts from other players.
Faking it. D tier. It has to be played in person and can get weirdly personal.
Trivia Murder Party. Triple Z tier. We don't like trivia, and making it about murder just makes it more stressful.
Party Pack 4. Monster Seeking Monster. D tier. We don't like it. Simulated dating games are creepy and we are perpetually lonely.
Survive the Internet. A tier. Very fun game. Teaches you nothing about surviving the internet, and that's what video games should do. Teach you nothing.
Fibbage 3. C tier. We don't like trivia and we don't like being fooled.
Bracketeering. C tier. It's the Tournament Arc the game, but for words. It's boring.
Civic Doodle. D tier. It's an exquisite corpse. Go play that instead. Party Pack 5.
Patently stupid. D tier. It's the presentation game, so yeah, aptly named.
Mad vs. City. D tier. More like bad. Alright.
Zeeple Dome. C tier. At least it had some interesting teamwork mechanics.
You Don't Know Jack full stream. D tier. More trivia, and we don't know who Jack is.
Split the Room. D tier. This requires more votes, but 100% voted for this to be put here.
Party Pack 6. Trivia Murder Party 2. Triple Z tier. More trivia, more murder, less fun.
Joke Boat. D tier. Long and annoying. We'd rather let the boat sink.
Push the button. D tier. Just go play Among Us.
Role Models. C tier. At the very least, you and other players may walk out of here with some new nicknames.
Dictionarium. A tier. This one is a lot of fun and we have encyclopedias of stupid words from here. Party Pack 7.
Talking Points. D tier. It's the presentation game again.
Devils and the Details. D tier. It's teamwork chores but you can sabotage others. No thanks.
Quiplash 3. S tier. Still as fun as it was in Party Pack 3, too bad Last Lash still sucks.
Champed Up. C tier. It's a combination of bracketeering and TKO. Just go play either of those instead.
Finally, Blather Round. B tier. This one is very frustrating. Kudos to them for making a game that can get this intense.
There we go. That doesn't look divisive at all. Ugh. Alright.
K.
K. 4.
Kill the Stream. Now that that's out of the way, we can begin. For those of you who watch our Twitch streams, you know that James likes running a credit sequence. It was a video of 1,000+ names passing by over a background while music plays. What you might not know is that this thing was extremely inconvenient. Since the names are actually blocks of text that are moved via keyframes, the formatting of their appearance and their rate of motion had to be recalibrated every time there was a new name. It also needed to be re-rendered beforehand, transferred between machines, loaded into the streaming software, and given the correct playback settings. With how cumbersome this all was, there'd be several nights where James wouldn't get to make a new credit sequence and would have to use an old one. I could tell this bothered him, since the fundamental idea of the credits is to thank followers and subscribers alike. But if it isn't up to date, then new followers don't get to see his thanks. So I decided to make my own credit sequence. 2 years and a lot of dedicated hard work later, we have Kill the Stream in its current and final state. And yeah, I get it, it's a Smash Bros ripoff. I wrote about development to myself in a private Discord channel. I do progress reports on graphics and features, debate with myself about ideas, and do bug reports. Since it was on Discord, I could have it on my phone too, and all my notes had a timestamp. Scrolling far enough back in here, we can find the game looked like this near the beginning. Since I'd never made a game before, I found myself pulling from a lot of half-remembered anecdotes about game development from magazines and interviews. For example, I remember a story about Wind Waker's development where the first thing designed was Link and a creature for him to interact with, a moblin. Everything else was designed to fit them. I finally landed on this design for James.
Help!
With his head and his hands separated from his body. With his fists separated like this, the main gimmick became about punching, and his animations were handled using math rather than drawn frames. After that, I had a lot of difficulty coming up with enemy designs. I'd lose entire days just tossing out sketches. Eventually, I locked James in his room and hosted a secret Twitch stream to ask chat for ideas, and that helped kick things off. The bouncing bunny and the hand turkey are almost the exact same creatures from that stream. Every morning, I would eat breakfast and take a long walk around my neighborhood and very intentionally just think about Kill the Stream. I wouldn't write anything down or draw anything, just think. Whatever stuck in my mind by the time I got back home was maybe a good idea. Anything forgotten was... what's the word? Anyway, since the game was designed to be an end-of-stream credit sequence and to eliminate inconvenience for James, I prioritized simplicity and offered lots of user input. If the game is simple, James will want to play it after several hours of doing something else. I figure if the game has as few complications as possible, it'll be easy to pick back up night after night. Kill the Stream also pulls a lot of data from outside of its executable. To keep the list of followers up to date, instead of exporting an entirely new application, the user simply goes into a TXT document and makes whatever changes needed. The game can read this plain text information and interpret it, allowing it to spawn names as well as give them different colors and sizes. There's also the music, the background image, and the avatar during the results screen. All of these can be changed so long as it's the correct format. The game also reads the current date for the weather effects. I settled on the name Kill the Stream because that's what the game is meant to do. It closes the curtain on the production of the Twitch stream. And James would often preface the credits by saying, "Alright guys, I'm gonna kill the stream." In fact, for a while I was gonna have a fake company logo appear when the game started, and have that company be Alright Guys, but I decided a splash screen would be annoying. One of the last things I did for the game was the title screen. I wanted to do a Mega Man 2 thing where there's a scrolling background in time with music. There's something so uniquely NES about how that intro looks and works, but it still manages to be inspiring to someone who doesn't have much nostalgia for the NES or Mega Man. I ended up finding this royalty-free song from a chiptune composer that has a drop a few seconds in, so I slapped that into the game and animated a scrolling background that stops at just the right moment. I think it works pretty well. If you'd like to see Kill the Stream in action, watch our Twitch streams and stick around till the end. It's nice to see it playing without me working on it anymore. I did what I wanted to, and I can move on. L for Labo! Yep, Nintendo is so powerful they got away with selling us cardboard. I love weird game accessories. The Game Boy Advance e-reader, the iToy, the Super NES Super Scope. There's something magical about how video games can create completely unique experiences using strangely colored, oddly shaped pieces of plastic. Even if they only work with less than a dozen games, those games become that much more memorable simply because of the extra effort. But not a lot of those accessories are games all their own, are they? Nintendo Labo is. And it's not even plastic, it's even cheaper. I remember when Labo was first announced, some part of me got so overwhelmed with excitement about what video games are and what they can be. I don't think I can properly express how magical it is to see these weird cardboard contraptions actually work after spending a couple hours nursing it into existence. I've never been one to trust my own hands, let alone to build a precise control system for a video game, but Labo's beautiful execution makes the dream work. Anyway, that enthusiasm ended up being expressed in this animated short I made in about 48 hours. The process of making this is such a blur now, because I was just thinking about Labo the whole time, and the jokes and the dialogue definitely don't match my true feelings, but it was still the fastest I'd ever taken something from concept to completion before. Labo made me feel more creative than I ever had. Opening up a big box of Labo, there's several sheets of flat cardboard and a bag of loose materials. But nowhere in sight are there any instructions on what to do with them. Oh hey, there's a Nintendo Switch cartridge here, that's strange. Having the instructions be on the game card instead of printed into a book is an incredible way to handle something like Labo. The player decides when to move forward and backward, can decide the pace, zoom in super far to these high definition models of cardboard, let's not forget, and rotate the camera whatever way they want at any point they feel like. All the while, a jazzy beat helps you concentrate, and a writer with personality prevents things from getting boring. I love how the writing sometimes reflects what I'll be thinking in my head at the time, with little personifications and sarcastic quips. I love how whenever you finish a step, the game tosses the contraption onto the floor. I love how anytime there's a material that isn't cardboard, it gets its own sound effect. And once you actually finish building out the kit, which can take some time, you realize it's only a small portion of what you can do with Labo. I've only ever had the first and second kits, but even the variety pack manages to have a lot of complications and intricacies with each toy. Ones like the piano have all sorts of knobs and buttons to mess with, and even the little ones like the RC car have extra things you can use. And then once you're done playing with your Labo, you can look around your house and realize you have cardboard laying around you can use for your own Toy-Con creation. And that is exactly what Toy-Con Garage is. Making your own Labo using cardboard, the Nintendo Switch, and some basic programming. Watching those old videos where people show off their Toy-Con creations makes my heart swell with joy at how much creativity and fun there is in the world just waiting to be tapped into with something weird like Labo. I feel a similar sensation with Game Builder Garage, but there's just something all the more incredible about having non-traditional controllers made from household materials and all the jagged edges and awkward execution that comes with that. I remember those weird couple of years when games would just spontaneously add Labo support. Big names and high-selling games like Mario Odyssey and Zelda Breath of the Wild got their own Labo integration. Just as soon as it was introduced, it felt like Labo was brushing shoulders with Nintendo's biggest franchises. I still think it's so strange how this momentum halted and Labo support stopped popping up, but I guess the world needed to get ready for my next favorite weird accessory. The Ring Fit Adventure Ring-Con. After the Ring-Con, my other favorite peripheral would have to be M
for Mario Party.
The whole series. The Mario Party series.
This, like H, should come as a shock to none of you. Where Jackbox might be the future of party games, Mario Party is the refined wine you keep in the cellar, only to be uncorked on special occasions when your favorite people come over.
So you can test your friendships, ruin winning streaks, and come up dry after a 50-turn strategy doesn't pay the dividends you're expecting, or a computer profoundly crunches your world to crumbs. Mario Party is an excellent mixed bag of fun. It will test your partnerships and friendships in ways you didn't know they could be tested, but they are also such a treasure in our household. We gather around the TV for Nintendo Directs, hopeful the next installment in the series will be announced. No matter who makes it, we're always excited to play with Mario and his friends again, as they sometimes have a story, sometimes don't.
Sometimes do a best of and sometimes don't.
Sometimes have Rosalina and sometimes don't.
Are sometimes good and are sometimes not.
Let you move individually and sometimes don't.
They get it. No matter the situation, Nintendo has two lifelong consumers of anything Mario Party, because we'll always find some part, even a minuscule one, to enjoy about even the worst of these games. There's a minigame that shines, or a board that stands above the rest, or the game just looks beautiful. As the Switch approaches its sunset years, we anxiously hope for more Mario Party to enjoy before we have to figure out what to do with all these Joy-Cons, these colored Pro controllers, and all this money.
Mario Party offers the optimum board game experience for friends and family alike. For an amount of money, you can be given several boards to play on, a variety of character pieces to choose that represent your personality or your favorite color, a pile of at least 40 minigames to play, an echelon of other modes to play and test your skills in, and an endless source of replayability, and, if you're smart enough, the coveted Sore Winner Award.
Or, if you're James, the Defeatism Award, because defeatism works apparently.
You can also win the Sore Loser Award, but you'd have to beat Andy for that, and that's a decathlon all its own.
Or you could win the Shut Up Award. That sounds pretty hard, doesn't it? No matter how far the friendships or how close the partnership, Mario Party is here to be gathered around for 4 to 8 player fun or online after Nintendo added online support for Super Mario Party and Superstars. Even though each entry might look the same to the casual observer, each one manages to either introduce a new mechanic or stand out from the others by having its own gimmick that doesn't come back. There's the costumes in 2, moving backwards in 3, the day-night cycle in 6, 8-player mode in 7, experimenting with being boring in 9. Booting up any single Mario Party leads to a unique experience different from the rest. We've been such long-time fans of the series that, now that the series is dipping into doing compilations every so often, we can actually tell when something is changed. When Mario Party The Top 100 came out, we were among the players criticizing the choices of minigames and pointing out the rebalances for each one. When Mario Party Superstars came out, we noticed all the compromises made to have all 5 boards sourced from 3 different games fit into the same rule set, and everything that had to be left behind. That's why we like having the original games so much. Even if controlling the N64 games can be a bit awkward, and button mashing a GameCube controller can be painful as we get older, nothing can replace the original games in our hearts. We love Mario Party so much, and I love weird peripherals so much, that we actively seek out ways to make the experience weirder. That microphone from Mario Party 6 and 7 is still so interesting to us, even if it's barely used. And Mario Party E! How many people have played Mario Party E? How many people have played with the extra rule set in Mario Party Advance? James and I used to share a bedroom, and for a long while, we used to play games after bedtime. We used to use the Game Link cable on the GBA to play with the gadgets in Mario Party Advance. Then Mario Party DS came out, and we'd play Mario Party games night after night using Download Play. Mario Party DS is already an incredible game, but for letting 2 little kids stay up late and play around using only 1 copy of the game, it's so much better.
Maybe that's why we never ended up as tall as we should have. We stayed up all night playing Mario Party.
Science would disagree, but we're having a moment, so... Still no. Very no.
You can believe what you want, Andy.
N? N. 4.
New Super Mario Bros.
Were you also aware I was only needed for the intro of this?
I don't suppose any of you can remember the very first game you followed from initial trailer or announcement to it finally landing in your hands, can you? Prior to that, there was no concept of a waiting period between announcement and fruition. Games just happened, and you had them, and you played them until the next one happened. I suppose that's the double-edged sword of learning about hype and how to control your own. Well, I remember the very first game I followed all the way to actually playing it. It was the very first game I ever pre-ordered in any regard. It was the first game I ever let the hype wash over me. The first one I ever counted the days until release. I didn't have enough experience in gaming or the right systems by that point in my life to be super familiar with Mario's adventures prior to Super Mario World or Super Mario Bros. 3 on the SNES or their re-release on the Game Boy Advance, so the new factor of New Super Mario Bros. Was already interesting to me. What new abilities would he receive? Would Yoshi make an appearance? What about the Hammer Brothers suit? Of course, watching the very first trailer would show off some of the new abilities in the game, but I never believed that was all of them. Trailers are designed to hype you up and hide some secrets. Of course, my wild mind overcomplicated the process and asked stupid questions like, what if Mario was a dinosaur? Odyssey made that dream come true years later, but still. I don't think I've ever been more excited to hold a game in my hands than I was to hold New Super Mario Bros. The box art already setting great expectations for the game by showing off giant Mario in all of his high-def glory. Then, I put it in my silver Nintendo DS, I powered it up, and I played it for the very first time. I don't think there's a way to accurately describe playing NSMB for the very first time except new. New is the perfect way, actually. This was a brand new Mario adventure taking place on a 2.5D dimensional plane on a dual-screen handheld device that I was now completely entranced by. I remember so many firsts and new things I was able to experience about this. I remember putting to memory tips and tricks I thought I taught myself. I remember feeling so cognitively aware of NSMB, it was like I had never played another Mario game in my life. I remember falling into my first pit only to find out wall jumping was a thing. I hopped out of there and suddenly had a new power that I could use to reach new heights. I remember getting stuck on some brick blocks and randomly discovering the ground pound and how if you're Big Mario and you hold the down button over a block that spits multiple coins, a power-up pops out after the 10th or 11th coin. I remember feeling so unbelievably intelligent and skillful because I brought a Mega Mushroom through the entirety of Bowser's final castle and used it to kick his kid off the stage and stomp him in the most one-sided final battle I've ever seen in a Mario game. I was so proud and so impressed, I believed no moment could surpass that. I absolutely will not get this to happen in this footage, but I remember in the fourth world, the jungle area, I was able to cross most of the entire area without ever touching the ground. I simply bounced on enemies' heads throughout the whole deal. I wasn't even trying to do that, I just did. My mind was blown and I felt like anything was possible. I remember reading in a cheat book, which I believe we still have, that you can activate a mode where you not only get to play as Luigi, but you can activate a no going backward mode where you can no longer travel left, just like older Mario Bros games. New Super Mario Bros was a very great teacher during my gaming formative years and how to look at different problems that bounce, roll, run, and jump in your way, and the various skills you can use that you already have to deal with them. Enemies have more than one way to be dealt with. There sometimes is a second way to do things, to do them better, to do them differently, and to end up with a new result. The bosses of the second and fifth worlds are excellent teachers of this lesson. It also taught me to read the manuals, try more buttons, and if you fall, you may have a wall jump to get you out of that pit. But NSMB doesn't really just stop at the epic, awesome adventure you can have with Mario, Luigi, Peach, Bowser, and this prick. If you just so happen to have a companion also equipped with a DS, a long car ride with nothing to do, and a desire to win, you can play multiplayer. This is a diminished version of the game where two players compete to earn big stars. There's 5 stages in which you can fight each other, some enemies, and use power-ups to steal stars from each other. There's also a pile of minigames you can play alone or with a friend similar to the ones in Super Mario 64 DS. It'll sound fairly dumb to many of you, but I regard New Super Mario Bros. As the very first game I ever became cognitively aware of as far as game mechanics, game feel, movement, playstyle, genre, and overall pleasure in gaming. I've played previous games, sure, but NSMB just stuck with me. The power-ups were new and had mechanics and parts of levels designed to fit them, secrets to find, and some of them are still exclusive to this game like the blue shell. Some were so cool they made it into other games like the Mega Mushroom. The level designs were so memorable, fun, tricky, and colorful. The jungle world is still my favorite. I even like the ice world. Save your gasps. The music, which stuck with many of us because things moved to the beat. Things were designed to turn, bounce, spin, and jump to the bars in the tunes you hear. That's absolutely fucking incredible. Until I wrote this, I never thought of timing my jumps to their reactions to the music, but now I'm considering replaying the whole game again just to try and do that on each level. There's so much of this game that I still look for in other games, more than just Mario games, that NSMB just did first for me that I don't often see. Wall jumping, for one. It's not the first one to do it, but it always excites me to see other games implement this because it reminds me of how great NSMB's was and is. This specific era and design of Mario is my absolute favorite because it continued for a very long long time. NSMB saw sequels on the Wii, 3DS, Wii U, and ports on the Switch that I was able to share with Andy. There is no elation more potent, more cured, more grandiose than realizing the design of the music, the new abilities Mario was given, some of the power-ups you loved, and the colors of the world you loved can now be experienced by people you treasure. Sure, it's not exactly the same, but it was scaled up, expanded, cleaned up, better animated, and now I get to hand Andy a controller and he gets to experience all of this with me on a bigger, better screen. An SMB is a gaming experience more joyful than most I've ever had because you don't have too many reawakenings in gaming to a genre or an entire franchise. Sure, I was in 5th grade, I probably had a few awakenings to games by that point in my life, but this was the first one to ever stick with me. The first one to ever influence future gaming experiences, choices, and purchases. The first one I ever remember becoming excited to share with not only Andy, but the prospect of it being shared with the world. There was no way in hell I wanted to keep this to myself. I wanted everyone to have this kind of excitement for a game, or several games they've played. It's incredible. New Super Mario Bros. In a way changed my life from that point onward and introduced me to a world of new that I had never seen before and have since been potently enjoying living in. NSMB is a treasure of an experience, and I hope you either got to enjoy the game to some degree or you feel very similar about a game you love too.
Oh.
4. Oh no, Overwatch.
An excellent day to affix myself with Farah's jetpack and...
Overwatch was the first game of the shooter, specifically the team shooter genre, we had ever given more than a passing glance to. Things like Team Fortress 2 and the various games that occupy that sphere aren't typically our cup of tea. However, this game was new and shiny to us. Not only that, our oldest brother was interested in joining our play sessions. What a treat! Also around this time, a very special mode was added to Overwatch for a very limited time.
Heroes never die.
Are we at the Lucio Ball part yet?
No, but you ruined the surprise.
Come get me when Lucio Ball is the topic.
He just stepped on my point and died as the topic was coming up, whatever. Lucio Ball is a 3-on-3 Rocket League ripoff mode that forces all players to learn Lucio real fast. He's a character who can increase his speed and uses a sound-related gun that can shoot a concussive short-range blast at the ball. His ultimate attack was also altered for this mode to draw the ball to him. When combined with his wall riding, the jump pads, and all the intensity of a football match, Lucio Ball became an addictive mode to play, specifically when you have 2 other trustworthy teammates to win and lose with. We weren't great at this mode, but we had more fun than anyone has ever had in Overwatch itself. This mode was a measure of teamwork, however flimsy ours may have been. We even designated roles for ourselves. I usually took the responsibility of goalie, which meant I was responsible for a lot of our own self-goals. Andy and Chris took the 2 forward positions. I was in love with the tension as the ball launched into the air with Lucio's concussive blasts. As it rolled across the field, suddenly shoots in my direction, is blasted away by Andy or Chris. Then I get to relax while the ball jettisons around the base. There are few games or series that have drawn us together, even fewer that get us to play together, still fewer that get us to participate together. Playing on the same team, doing our best to outdo each other at stupid stunts we attempt on jump pads, or when to use our ults. This even extended into the regular game. We learned characters together. We pointed out niches each character had that would fit our playstyles. We shared patch notes and coming updates with each other that would alter our favorites and finally debuff Symmetra. It really became a game the 3 of us rallied behind, excited to talk about and heated about while playing. This really was a unique experience for us as we got to share our affinity for this new shiny genre of gaming Andy and I hadn't dipped our toes into with our oldest brother who invited us to join him. They probably don't see the bond we shared and treasure it as much as I do though. I don't regret a single second we all spent playing that game together because at the time, it was a lot of fun. Lucio Ball, even the regular game gave us such special moments we were able to carry with us, share with others, and save forever. It really was a good time.
P. 4.
Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Why does that Wurmple have red eyes?
Why did Andy and I write these so when it's my day I have to remove Andy from the screen, but when it's his day I just do the intro and never show up again? We shouldn't have to remove him forcefully, right?
Catch it! Catch the Wurmple!
I'm out of Pokeballs or something. Lord! That's right, you guys are about to endure a lecture about the best Pokemon game from a guy whose last experience in the series was X on the 3DS. Let's go! Pokemon Legends Arceus is the apex of the Pokemon series, to me at least. Ever since Pokemon launched on the Game Boy and my brothers and I started collecting cards and hiding secrets about where we got the best Mon from, I have been itching for a game that feels like this. A game where Pokemon feel like a part of the world, eating, breathing, reacting randomly, not confined to trees, tall grasses, water, caves, and certain patches of land. I think we all kind of longed for this type of Pokemon experience. Plus, this game came into my possession at kind of a pivotal time in my life. You see, I had just contracted my first dose of COVID-19 back in 2022 and was quarantined in my house. in my basement more specifically. And with nothing to do while I laid on my couch attempting to sleep off the exhaustion that seemed to undulate around me, I picked up a game that I thought would just pass the time, Pokemon Legends Arceus. I had heard great things from my oldest brother who sang its praises like it was the only language he spoke. I didn't want to play anything involved or with a long runtime because I couldn't focus very well, so I figured a colorful, interesting world that I hadn't been involved in for quite some time would be a great idea. What I did not expect was just how much I would actually fall in love with this game and all of the mechanics that make it stand out far and above other Pokemon entries. I didn't expect this epic adventure that I didn't know I craved to take place as I played the game. No, I do not like open world games ordinarily, but this one felt so full of life and fun to me. Look at all those different Pokemon just living life around here. You can even see some in the distance to catch. Sure, they may move at a frame a second, but you can still see them and anticipate the danger they may pose or the adventure they can improve. You can just find a pile of similar Pokemon like Clefairy or Yanma, catch or fight every single one to extinction in that area, then move on to the next area. It's incredible to me. In my half-awake stupor, and even now, I still see this as simply the most climactic Pokemon adventure you can have. There's so little between you and catching or fighting Pokemon. The loading screens, which I had never had a problem with before, but definitely do not miss now, are so minimal and unobtrusive to the gameplay. It's simply impeccable. Then there's Alpha Pokemon. I still remember the first one I encountered that wasn't story related. It was a Wurmple. A friggin' Wurmple. It was a slightly bigger, slightly more aggressive worm than the others that surrounded it. I was absolutely dumbfounded that something so diminutive could still have such an impact. I understood alphas at that point to look and feel like alphas. Rapidash, Snorlax, the others you encounter in the first area. But then there's Wurmple. The only thing making it alpha is likely its size, which is still tiny. It was absolutely hilarious. I could not stop laughing. Sure, I was half awake, but even thinking about it and how a slightly bigger worm being an alpha is very funny. Upon a revisit to the game, it really reminded me how much I had seen when I played through it nearly 2 years ago. Each region I visited, the danger I put myself into to catch the strongest of the strong Pokemon, the strategies I thought I used but didn't even know about, type advantages, the hunt I went on, and how much I had left to do. Even now, I caught Pokemon I didn't even know were in the game. I had done a lot in this game before deciding I was ready to put it down, but I didn't think I missed many Pokemon. It really showed how much adventure is waiting for me to return to if I ever feel the want. Arceus is a beautiful game to me. It's not perfect, but this is exactly how I imagined any of these games actually playing. Exactly how the trainer in that world would expect everything to be. The Pokemon that move and react to the world, moving randomly, and becoming afraid or angry at you for invading their space while you're just trying to catch them all. The music is emblematic of this incredible adventure that continues far and wide even after you've put down evil bug Jesus. I am still just floored by how much more there is to do after I had already done all I'd done. This game really is a testament to how great the series can be after years of menus, screens, and holdups, and this really excites me for the next entry in the Legends series. I really enjoyed this game and I'm very glad I had it in quarantine. It's a great game to not only pass the time with, but just to enjoy for a first or second or 17th time.
Q for quiet, which is exactly what you are going to be while everything in this video becomes the very first Gateway to Duralbit shirt.
I've actually been wearing the shirt's intended design over my regular shirt for the whole month. What are you reading, Andy?
Oh, the Minish Cap game oh, it's the G2D shirt. I kind of wish that hadn't happened. I was enjoying reading that. James, did our background just become the shirt?
Holy shit, it did. Everyone quick, look at your hands. Now back at Andy.
Oh hey, I'm wearing the official G2D shirt over my unofficial G2D jacket. That's okay. More layers means more warm.
Andy, where's the toilet paper?
Is it not on the roll?
It's our shirt. Oh, let me check the cabinet. The cabinet is our shirt now. Whoa, the toilet is our shirt!
Did the door just become our shirt?
Don't worry, Andy. It's not an issue I couldn't flush, it'll just turn into our shirt.
I'm not sure this video was such a good idea. What if something vital becomes our shirt?
Andy, try standing up.
Whoa! Okay, yeah, bad idea. How do we reverse this? No. No! The first official G2D shirt is coming! It's coming soon! Get it before—
R. For?
The Ratchet & Clank series. Were you aware? Video games are actually technology. That's something I didn't quite understand until the Ratchet & Clank games helped me realize this. Prior to these games, video games were just bought and used. They could make you laugh, make you cry, or look incredible on a shelf, much like a book or the Hyper Light Drifter Collector's Edition vinyl soundtrack. But games are actually exceptionally complicated pieces of technology that usually take dozens of people years of careful, focused, delicate work to make. I very clearly remember playing Ratchet & Clank Going Commando and seeing Clank walk around on a spherical moon for the first time. The rest of the game was Ratchet running around levels with similarly flat horizons, like every other 3D platformer at the time. But when Clank was on that moon, something flipped over in my brain and made me realize what I was currently seeing was new. I had never actually seen this before, which means the people who made this game had never seen this before, which means they made something we hadn't seen before, which means they had to think of something people hadn't seen before and work to make that never before seen thing a reality. They have now changed the world in whatever small way.
This was the first series of non-Nintendo platformer games I remember playing. The first real non-Nintendo games I played, really. We were a Nintendo house for most of our younger lives. Then the PS2 fell into our hands, as did the first 3 Ratchet & Clank games. Not only were these experiences challenges to my notions of what games are to me, but this was a developer outside of Nintendo's sphere that could make my eyes wide, my mouth gape, and my brain go, "Wow, that was awesome! Nothing will top this!"
Is it because of the guns?
Maybe. It's also the sections of levels that use the grind rails with all these extraterrestrial futuristic civilizations that occupy the screen. The areas where you use the magnet shoes, walk upside down, rotate around platforms, and gravity feels like it shifts. The different alien species you meet, talk to, and destroy with the dozens and dozens of guns and gadgets each game gently allows you to break the world with. Each one crafted with such finesse and intrigue to make the most effects on screen, make enemies feel the most pain, and help you collect the most bolts, the bouncer, the pyrocitor, the liquid nitrogen gun. Even the not as superior future games have enticing and memorable weapons such as... Then at the end of the day, after blasting everything in sight, beating it to death with your wrench, and feeling the muddy rip and tear of the many enemies in the series, you can hunt down the gold bolts in each game. Most have a different form, being silver, platinum, or others, but still huntable. You can also try for skill points, which unlock new cheats in these games like big head mode, new money textures, or other stuff. These games are excellent examples of the perfect mix between the specifically crafted platforming of any top-tier Nintendo game, weapons that make your teeth dance, unlockables that are both fun and challenging to search for, and stretching the limits of what gaming can be. These take place in space. Space! Anything can happen in space, and these games know it. I love them. Yes, even that one.
S?
S. For...
The Super Smash Bros. series. Before we start, I'm cooler than all of you combined. I got the Smash 3DS demo early because I was a Club Nintendo Platinum member. Immediately cooler than you!
Thank you, Andy. Very helpful. Just like Mario Party, Smash Bros. Is a game series my brothers and I have gathered around screens to cheer about, theorized, hypothesized, and otherwise get tragically overexcited about. The characters, the stages, the trophies, the references, the shoutouts, the celebration of the game series we love and grew up with, and all this crap all come together into an amalgamation of items, bashing, stage hazards, crashing, and meteor smashing. It's a marvel of the industry that Nintendo has created a bigger crossover than any media could possibly conceive. The hype we all build as characters are announced can send a crackle through the air of the earth, specifically if it's from Fire Emblem or another f***ing fighting game. The party game series has a lot of memories behind it, doesn't it, Andy?
Can't hear you. I'm cooler than you.
That's the spirit? I have fond memories of each installment in the series, although most of my best memories of Smash 64 are all the mods that make it a much more expansive game. Melee was the first Smash game I remember playing in any capacity. I remember getting the game home on or near release day, and my oldest brother and I playing a match on Rainbow Cruise. I went Mario, he went Link. We both have different opinions on who won, I did, but I remember that so fondly. The world fell away, and it was just him and I on this new game system seeing graphics and gameplay evolve in our heads in real time.
I was a toddler, so I only remember calculating the approximate amount of full lengths of James it would take to get from here to the moon. Results were inconclusive.
That sounds real and true. Brawl was filled with a similar amount of memories, only this time with Smash Dojo around, everyone could follow the development updates Sakurai posted. Characters, stages, weapons, modes. I still remember the day G2D was announced and I finally figured out how to properly pronounce his name. For years, I thought it was Dedeed, not DDD. I still remember the night before release, my oldest brother entered he and I in a brawl Brawl tournament. Holy crap, it was my first game tournament of any kind. He and I both lost in the second round though. It sucked a bit because the tournament was outside in nearly freezing weather, so feeling your hands was quite difficult, much less the Wiimote's buttons. I still remember as we approached the kiosk to get our entrant numbers, one of the organizers was attempting to unlock Marth as you only needed to fight in 10 brawls to get a chance to add him to your roster. The organizer lost and the crowd all expressed their anguish in one unsatisfied, unified, loud sigh.
The adventure mode in this one is still better than most things Smash has ever done. James and I spent many hours combing through each level, attempting to get the best stickers, make sure we missed no trophies, and striving for that sweet 100% marker. Of course, we never utilized any of those stickers, but they were still fun to collect. We also put in a lot of time attempting to complete the challenge board. There are still some left undone, such as Boss Rush on Intense, but that's a source of frustration we never intend to return to.
Then there was the online mode. You could actually connect your Wii to the internet and play online with strangers and friends. That was revolutionary. Smash was once an at-home activity, but now you can take your toxic behavior online and piss off strangers. I had a few friends I would regularly play against in the days of Brawl, and we gave each other a run for our money. I have a friend who threw a birthday party where all we did for hours was play Smash Brothers Brawl. There were 5 people playing and we had a system of loser steps out so player 5 could step in. I lost once on purpose so I could go to the bathroom.
My early demo bit sounds like the smallest of brags compared to that.
I hope if anyone who attended that party watches this, they remember the thorough ass wiping I handed all of them.
Friendly atmosphere that must have been. Real party game mentality you're adopting. No toxic competitive attitude here.
Then there was Smash 4 on the 3DS.
That demo I got early because I was so cool. Early, and it has unlimited replays. You other folks got the one that has only 30 plays. Try being cool next time.
This version came out in my college years, so of course everyone on campus had their 3DS systems out fighting each other, talking about the recent character ads, stages, and lamenting the loss of the Ice Climbers. It was really the first time I had seen so many people communally discussing any game out in the open. No longer was it frowned upon to carry around a game system, now people approached you with theirs, seeking battle. Plus, the better online modes meant better matches with friends and strangers alike. This version is on all of our 3DS systems digitally, so we never have to exchange game cards of any kind. You always want access to the objectively best Smash Brothers game.
Smash 3DS taught me how important it can be to give the player as much control and as many options as possible in a digestible format. In previous Smash games, I didn't play very many characters. I stuck with well-rounded, instant gratification fighters that didn't change much between games, like Kirby, Mario, and Captain Falcon, and I'd rely quite a bit on their specials since they'd frequently have more range than the typical Smash attack. But Smash 3DS introduced custom moves. Every single playable character, not you, in the roster, had additional choices for each of their 4 special moves. In addition, their stats could be adjusted in minute or massive ways by giving them equipment. Don't like how slow and clunky Bowser is? Make his side special a sliding claw swipe and boost his speed up to maximum. Think Link's bow is too weak? Boost up his attack and special stats and then give him the alternate special that makes each arrow hit like a bus. These systems of changing special moves and adjusting stats allowed me to experiment with characters I previously had no interest in playing. I had loadouts that I would actually main. Plus, you could use your custom movesets in the best game mode in history, Smash Run. Smash Run is great for hundreds of reasons, but chief among them is that you can earn equipment and characters' special moves just by playing. Your rewards are tallied at the end of the round, and you can mess around with what you got in the custom menu, and then once you've changed things up, you can feel out your adjustments in another round of Smash Run, after which you'll find more equipment and special moves. It's a beautiful cycle that drip feeds the player options and possibilities. Plus, there's no difficulty options. You cannot change how smart the computers are or how tough the enemies are, so it's an incredibly casual mode. Smash Wii U just didn't have this smooth of a gameplay loop. It had Smash Tour, and that was, I don't know, something. Heck, in our copy of Smash Wii U, we didn't even get every special move. We just ported over our builds from Smash 3DS, since that game released first and we played it so much more.
I remember the night the Wii U version came out. Our oldest brother and I stayed up as long as we could streaming the whole deal, playing classic mode and doing as many challenges and events as we could. I remember one event battle in specific that was giving us incredible trouble. You fought a team of Mr. Game & Watches that got bigger and stronger as you fought, eventually bringing you to a fight with 2 giant metal ones. We did eventually complete this. In fact, here's footage of the exact moment of our victory.
It's done! It's done, everyone! It's finally done. You're gonna watch a horrifying montage of that on YouTube later.
I am not there, as I was also in college and had better things to do than be a loser playing a game on a Wii U. I was cool and had my 3DS and my unlimited play demo.
You and I got to enjoy the game later, though, and we enjoyed Ultimate together. Remember that? You and I stayed up for 6 hours waiting for the game to download, so we attempted to be funny for that long. Then, we played exclusively Spirits Mode until we couldn't see straight.
A migraine to remember. I remember lamenting the fact we were left with so few characters we actually knew how to use early on for harder fights, so we just started making turns that we thought would lead us to our favorite characters, then coming back for the rabble later. I also remember beating Smash Ultimate Spirits Mode for the first time. James and I had been playing it together on his Switch on stream, and I was catching up on my own Switch in my spare time. One night, I was getting sick of replaying all these fights, so I powered through to the end before James did, playing in my room on my dinky TV till like 4 in the morning. And as the credits rolled and the final cinematic played, I found myself tapping my foot, hoping and waiting for some additional scenes with all these well-rendered and voiced Nintendo characters. But then it just stopped, and I was just left alone. With All-Star and Multi-Man now merged into something ridiculous called Mob Smash, and the event battles being absorbed into the Spirits battles, there just wasn't anything for me to do. Since Smash Ultimate launched without a lot of things to do, remember how Stage Creator and Home Run Contests were post-launch updates? I ended up dropping the game after that. It's for these reasons that I end up remembering Smash Ultimate fondly because of the lead-up to its release. Every Nintendo Direct was just a countdown to the next fighter reveal, totally overshadowing the other trailers and release dates. Every leak was so harshly scrutinized by the various niches of the internet. People of all different careers and expertises would crawl out of the woodwork to pick apart fakes. It was a veritable bloodbath of hype and disappointment that demands analysis by future generations. Everybody had their ideal picks and would try to adjust the odds through whatever creative means. Fan art, animations, mock movesets, tributes. People came together to show support for fictional characters from all different series and genres, just at the thought of them being farted on by Wario or stepped on by Bayonetta. It was routinely an incredible thing to be in the middle of. Of course, this all happened during Smash Wii U and 3DS, and even a little bit during Brawl, but I would argue that with the internet constantly expanding and elbowing its way into our lives, it had its largest presence during Smash Ultimate. And if there is a next Smash, the internet and social media will have an even larger presence then.
I can't imagine the nightmare the internet will become when the next Smash is announced.
Yes, you can. You'll be the one leading the charge to get Adol Kristen in Smash, you hypocrite.
Take the name of my red-haired Jesus out of your damn mouth.
James found a trident in a boat, so I'm going to don my long purple wig, my poofy pants, and my belly dancing skills. If you don't know which character I'm referencing, you don't belong in the Shantae for Smash crowd. T.
For
Tales of Symphonia. James and I will take turns talking about this game, just like RPG rules. We'll even take on our usual roles. Mine is mage type, so I'll be in front and go first. That doesn't seem right.
It's not, I'm AFK, I had to pee.
Playing games with James is always a treat. Considering how much we love RPGs and how many we play around here on G2D, it's a little bit silly how few we've talked about during this game a day thing. But what can we say? We play lots of other kinds of games too, and it just so happens that, as far as RPGs, Tales of Symphonia is our number one. The Tales of series is probably the only JRPG series I love. They're really ambitious, beautiful, and have hundreds of characters in them, which makes them a bit messy, often hard to follow, and excellent. Tales of Symphonia was my first Tales of game, but even after playing lots of others, it's still my favorite. I'll never ever forget the sensation I had the first time I realized the game wasn't kidding when it claimed Tetheala really truly was an entire other planet in equal size to Silverond. Twice as much story to experience, twice as many characters to meet, and twice as difficult bosses to fight. Just when you think the game might be ramping up to do its finale twist, the twist is being bigger. And even without that, playing through the game changed me. Its depiction of unfounded prejudices and their long-term effects, large and small, its exploration of corrupt organizations pursuing a self-serving goal no matter the sacrifice from the public, the idea of family being about more than blood, all of it is successfully conveyed to the audience despite the fantasy setting with elves and magic. Playing Symphonia at the age I did really opened my eyes to a lot of real-world problems and ideas that I had no idea existed prior, including the fact that games can teach you lessons just as well as any other serious medium.
I really wish I had something deep and world-changing to say about Tales of Symphonia in that way. It was the very first game that had ever taught me that multiplayer games are more than just party games or competitive. They can also be measures of teamwork. Given that this came out in 2003 on the GameCube, I would consider it a rare occurrence to have an RPG, much less a multiplayer RPG on the platform, that two grade schoolers are going to pick up. But that we did. This was the first RPG Andy and I ever played together, and the first one that gave me the craving to play more. Not only RPGs, but more video games with Andy. You see, as much as we may bicker and brawl, Andy is an excellent teammate. He has your back through almost anything and will fill in cracks where necessary. He knows when to pull back and strategize and when to jump straight in, give it your all and win. This was the very first game that gave me insight into our team dynamic, which is I am chaos and Andy is order, which has been a hilarious way to play video games over the last several decades.
For you, maybe.
Andy typically adopted a mage role, sticking to the back line, casting powerful spells, and calling out needs to the team members up front. I was typically up front, protecting Andy as much as I could and offering ideas for spells to cast so we can combo our abilities. We didn't really stray from our self-assigned roles except to try the 7 other characters in the game, but we usually went back to our first choices, Lloyd for me and Genus for Andy. I still remember triumphing over Ambition for the very first time. The time and resource sink that entire fight became. The frustration and anger we both shared at how much we had put in, only to almost fail. The fact we had completed not only the game, but what we had considered to be the hardest boss at the time. It wasn't until years later, after the PS3 version came out, which we never completed in full, that we realized there was another 60 to 80 hours of content we just never played together. We definitely didn't have the time to do it way back when, and didn't have the wherewithal to attempt the content way or back or when. Things like the evil book dungeon, the serving minigames, the cat side quests, acquiring Meteor Storm.
What about the casino?
Oh, that lie? The lie the remaster included that ended up being one of the sole reasons I will eat $20 before I'd recommend that version to another single human soul again?
Calm down. These are supposed to be positive.
You're right, sorry. Tales of Symphonia is great. It really opened me up to a genre of video games I never really gave any thought to, cooperative adventure games. And since then, we've played many, even outside of Namco's Tales of series. They are some of my favorite games to play specifically because I have Andy at my side to joke with, fight with, adventure with, and take in the story with. It's some of my favorite moments on stream when he and I jive so well with a moment that we get lost in it, cracking jokes, and creating a long-lasting inside joke or phrase that we bring into our regular lives, which we will now recite completely free of context.
I'm bored. Do you know any games?
Kamawana ate her mother.
Techt.
I had that!
It is I, the Mind Flayer.
Ooh! Ah! Welcome to this, and the many, many more momentary phrases and jokes we've made that become momentous occasions in our community. RPGs bring worlds, characters, stories, friends, and brothers together. I'm so glad this was the first game we ever gave any sort of teamwork toward because it was the perfect blend of action, adventure, storytelling, character development, and us arguing over whether to fight that boss or to attempt that side quest because we don't know what is and what is not permanently missable.
And now we'll never know. Thanks a lot.
You.
4.
Uno. Were you aware? I like playing cards. There's something about their basic, elegant designs that help them be so flexible. Not only can you use them for dozens of individual games, but there's a lot of different designs for the suits and face cards. I, for one, have a few decks of themed playing cards I like to keep as clean as possible. A shame the Zelda one is Japanese, so it's region locked. Ah well. Anyway, all of this applies to Uno card decks as well. Uno cards are colorful and don't need to display much information, so there's lots of room for design. You can't walk into any retail store without there being a whole rack of licensed Uno decks, filthy with various properties and artworks. I even have my very own Uno deck, which is this clean minimalistic deck by Warlson Oliveira. It's so sleek and readable. What's cool about the current version of Uno on Steam is that you can personalize your deck and playmat, and even the sound effects. The designs don't incorporate all the ones you can find on store shelves, of course, since this is made by Ubisoft, but it's still nice to see how far they can go. Uno can be a game about strategy and planning like any other card game, but I would argue it's more intentionally about sabotage. And if you remember what we chose for our M video a few days ago, we like sabotage in this house. If you've never played Uno, the goal is to get rid of your hand of cards before the other players do, and so naturally, plenty of cards in your hand will consist of ones that force other players to draw cards. You can also mess with them in other ways, like skipping their turn, reversing turn order, swapping hands, or changing the cards that can be played next. There are basically only 3 possible actions for every player turn: draw a card, play a card, or play a card that ruins the next player's turn. Heck, there's an entire rule that's more or less just pointing and laughing at one player. When you're down to one card, you're supposed to shout Uno so that everyone else will focus their efforts on you to stop you from winning. But if you don't shout Uno and the other players notice, they get to yell at you to draw a card. Hardy har, you forgot to shout Uno, and now we all have to keep playing. My old college roommates and I like to play Uno whenever we catch up. It's a great game for long stretches of conversation where not much happens, and then somebody throws down a draw 4 card, and the energy in the room turns to dynamite. Insults are hurled, bridges are burned, and we threaten each other's reputations. Anytime somebody shouts the word Uno, the entire game becomes a mad dash to bury that player in cards. They briefly become the villain, and the rest of us have to team up to defeat them with the power of friendship. And eventually, somebody else calls Uno, and that friendship is totally shattered and reforged against the new foe. I have a few memories of my friends calling me some of the most cutting, awful things you can say to another person. And then if I poke around in the memory a bit, I'll notice, oh yeah, they're holding Uno cards. That explains it. It's remarkable how such a simple game can cause such hefty emotional reactions.
I can't be certain, but I think Uno may have ended more friendships than Mario Party ever could. I don't have an exact measurement on this statistic though.
V.
4.
The Virtual Boy. The Virtual Boy is literally a health hazard. Due to its monochrome display and immersive visor that eliminates outside light, you're looking into pure darkness pierced via red LEDs.
Of course, this thing is a scary piece of technology that has probably caused more pain than entertainment, but look at it! This was the future in 1995. People looked at this thing, this stationary virtual reality visor with a controller stapled to it, and said, yes, this is the future. Until 4 years later when this thing was discontinued, games ceased released, and people realized perhaps the future doesn't have to hurt this much.
This thing is a completely solitary gaming experience, even more so than modern VR headsets are, because at least with VR, you can watch someone jerk their body around unnaturally and get a chuckle out of that much. But for a Virtual Boy to work, the user has to remain as completely still and hunched over as possible. In fact, did you know this thing has a port for a link cable for multiplayer? Not only do no games exist that could support multiplayer, but the link cable was never manufactured.
I have had 2 very different virtual reality experiences in my life. The first was several years ago when I played Robo Recall to earn a pin at a convention. I was constantly tangled in the cable that led from my visor to the computer. My hands were confused because the controllers weren't as stationary as my brain expects controllers to be, and I never got into the controls or mechanics of what was happening. As mind-blowing as the experience was, I don't think gaming is ready for this. I don't think it ever will be. My second experience was with the Virtual Boy, which I found much more gratifying. First and foremost, no cable to twist around my body for a tech person to constantly touch and rotate me to prevent twisting. Second, I don't have to turn my head to see the entire game. It was visible all in one spot. Finally, the controller was a single, cabled object I could hold and feel, and the button and D-pad placement were familiar and easy to get used to. That third thing really pushed this thing over the edge for me. I could understand what I was pressing, what was meant to happen, and how my hands were supposed to react.
The Virtual Boy is so weird to me. Like, how does this thing exist? This is a finished product that could be purchased on store shelves and rented from Blockbuster. To get to that point, it had to go through pitches, conceptual designs, planning meetings, evolve during stages of development, pass through testing, and endure quality control and play testing. And we ended up with nothing more than a peripheral.
That is 100% all the Virtual Boy and virtual reality-based gaming should be. The world may not have been ready for the Virtual Boy in 1995, but if it had the time, the technology, and the evolutions in gaming that we had today, the Virtual Boy could have ended up as something that didn't give people blinding migraines, Nintendo a financial loss the size of one of Saturn's moons, and us a bout of creator's block as to what to say about this thing so strong that I wrote that last part into the script.
Yeah. Well, we only have 2 of the system's games, James. That's 87% of this thing's library right there. And we're still mentioning our creator's block twice.
We better finish this thing before we mention the creator's block a third time. Oh no!
W. 4.
Record of Lotus War, D-Lit in Wonder Labyrinth.
Ah, good. Yet another game where we bent the rules to fit it in there. Of all the W's, you had to pick something like this.
Yes, now step aside because this one is good. I have never heard of Record of Lotus War. I don't know who Deedlit is. Team Ladybug was an unknown in mine and Andy's known developers book. So when I first saw the trailer for this game posted on Red Art Games' Twitter account, it really struck several nostalgic chords for me. Let's begin with how this looks. If you remember our honorable mention for C, my love for the DS-era Castlevania games are well known. They are some of my favorite games, with Ecclesia being far and above one of the best ones. The animation, the movement, the dodging, combat, platforming, story presentation, enemy display information, and controls all feel very similar to any of those Castlevania games. I was immediately on board with this. There aren't many games that I know of that exist like this, but it seems like Team Ladybug specializes in this type of design. If you look at their Toho game and their upcoming Blade Chimera game, and you're a fan of any of the 2D Castlevanias, Team Ladybug is your new best friend and a glorious gift to the planet. Another part this game has that really caught me by surprise was the switching ability. After acquiring the spirits of fire and wind, you can use the R button on a Switch controller to switch between a blue aura and an orange aura. Equipping the blue aura allows you to be impervious to blue attacks and absorb some mana from them. Same for the orange aura and orange attacks. Even lava will not hurt you while you have an orange aura. You can drown in it until you get the power to breathe in water, but that's still cool. The reason I point this out is because this reminds me of another Metroidvania type game that I hadn't thought of in about a decade. Outland. This is a game about switching between blue and orange auras to evade attacks the opposite color of your aura. There's combat and platforming perils that involve switching fast and utilizing each aura to exploit enemy weaknesses. In fact, it was kind of a Ratatouille moment when the trailer played because it drew me back to Outland. Now, I haven't touched this game in a very long time and never completed it, but I remember how invested I was in this game. The wall jumping, the constantly fluid combat because enemies could switch their auras at will, which meant your own attacks had to evolve to fit the situation. It was a lot of fun to play, and presents a decent amount of difficulty as bosses and hazards with ever-shifting favorite colors get in your way. Wonder Labyrinth incorporates the freely changing auras the player can activate at any time to dodge attacks and strike weak enemies, and adds several levels, even beyond being able to absorb the mana from same color attacks. There are further elements of magic at play that certain enemies are weak to. The level system can increase your attack at 3 and heal you, and there are collectibles that further increase your attack with each aura. You can easily fill up both auras' level bars by striking enemies and hanging meat with the opposite color of the bar you want to fill. I've said this already, but I'll gladly say it again. Team Ladybug really enhanced the market of 2D Vania games with their ideas and mechanics. We should all be so excited for Blade Chimera, specifically if Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth is anything to go by. I highly recommend this game to any Vania fan for its combat, dynamic controls, presentation, animation, and spectacular bosses. Check out how awesome Wonder Labyrinth is, everyone.
This deed is lit! James made me say that.
X. 4. Mega Man X. Andy, allow me the honor.
Of what?
There we go. He doesn't want to be here for this one anyway. Mega Man is a series of games that we only recently began collecting and or playing in any meaningful fashion. We are aware of its 30+ year history, we just never played the games. Our first playable experience with anything Mega Man was his appearance in Smash 4, which annoyed Andy to no end. If he were here, he would remark on how annoying I could be playing the Blue Bomber. Flash forward to 2023, and one of our Twitch viewers was having a birthday, and we would like to celebrate those with a game of their choice. This viewer picked Mega Man X. We bought the PS2 X collection a month or two prior. Before we get into the meat of this, let me just say, I very much regret having never touched a Mega Man X game in my life. There are a lot of things that make this game very special to me. The first part is the big deal our G2D community made about our first Mega Man experience. It's apparently a series of games that people enjoy for one reason or another, and our community was excited to see us tap our toes in for the very first time. Gotta admit, I was rather hyped. The second part was definitely the amount of help I had while playing through the game. Viewers offer tips and tricks to help defeat bosses, cross hazards, get extra lives, and even get all unlockables. It was a very pleasant experience while I struggled with the controls and level remembering. Which leads me to the third part, remapped buttons. I have never in my life been more overjoyed. Moving the dash to the L or R button was by far one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, hands down. The game ran like butter afterward. A spectacular time was had. Levels bowed to me, bosses melted, Hadoos were kenned. Which leads me to the penultimate part of this, completing the game. Mega Man X is a hard game. It's not impossible, but there are many moments where the frustration got rather high and the urge to give up was coming close. But through the bosses I was less than happy to fight multiple times, the multiple attempts at the Sigma Wall boss, and even failing several times at Chill Penguin, I did it. Obviously not without the help of my community, but I did it. Every collectible, every sub-tank, everything. This game in under 5 hours was now complete in my book. Now the final part of why this is on our list, why I removed Andy from the situation, and why I bent the rules to let Mega Man X into our X Day. I'm still looking for another Mega Man X. I had never felt such elation at playing a game I'd never touched in a series of games with billions of entries and a history of characters that I can now get involved in. Mega Man X was so fun, so intriguing, and so fresh to me that I'm still searching for that high. It inspired me to try things like Protodroid Delta and Gravity Circuit, the second of which is probably the closest you can actually get to how you feel playing Mega Man X for the very first time. The music, the gameplay, the unlockables, the different powers, the weaknesses, the varied bosses, the levels that have effects on each other depending on the order in which you do them, the widely available healing and energy restoring items, the easily findable extra lives, the different colored iconic suits, the ease with which you can 100% this game, and the help I received from the community. All of this adds up to an impossible experience that few other games can offer. I was overjoyed to beat the game a first, now a second time, and I'm very excited to play the other X games they are requested too. Mega Man X is an excellent game, and that could very well be just because of the circumstances attached to me playing it the first time. I can't guarantee I would have loved it as much had it not been for everything that made that Twitch stream such a great experience. Why? 4. Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana. Please don't get on me about pronunciation. I am simply too exhausted by this point to argue. Now then, Ys 8. I remember the exact moment this game settled into my soul as one of the best gaming experiences I have ever had. It was a buildup of events. Several months before knowing the game existed, I discovered Ys the Oath and Felghana's soundtrack on YouTube. It opened me up to this world of epic rock music that still conveyed a sense of adventure as well as danger through the track Valestein Castle. The castle was meant to be explored, but JDK Band made this music in a way that never made it feel hastened. You weren't doing this quickly, you were doing this at your own pace while the drums, electric guitar, and other instruments boomed in your ear. I was instantly in love with this. This serious, epic, awesome, enchanting, infectious track was my very first exposure to anything in the field of Ys or Nihon Falcom. Weeks later, Nintendo opened my eyes yet again. January 2018, in the middle of a Nintendo Direct Mini, there it was. The first time I had ever seen this game, that character, those characters, the world, the game that would become my Hyper Light Drifter.
Low blow. But true, I do own it on every system that can play it.
As a fan of the Tales series and starving for anything the Zelda-like that wasn't Breath of the Wild, this game was an instant buy for me. Summer couldn't come soon enough. I did all the research I could on anything that wasn't Ys 8. I did my absolute best to avoid learning anything more than the trailers showed. No music, no other trailers, no character descriptions, nothing. I was not spoiling myself. Several agonizing months later, we finally received one of the best games the Switch ever beheld. Not only did it just come to the Switch, it dragged with it some goodies I was not privy to that already threw my expectations of the game even higher. I hadn't even booted the game up yet and I was already excited. Included with the Switch case were character cards featuring Adol Kristen, the main adventurer for the series, Dogi, Adol's adventuring buddy who I found out later you can only play as in one Ys game. And it's not this one. And Donna Eclusia, a mysterious blue-haired woman who will become your favorite character by the end of the game. I also found out later this game was originally on the Vita, and had a super duper awesome collector's edition I missed. I was unreasonably angry for not knowing that, until 2022 when they remade that edition for its re-release on the PS5, which delights me to no end. I have that version and it sits on my shelf as one of my prized possessions. Now, I was not aware of any of the long-running jokes and cliches that the Ys series is known for, or that surround Adol himself, so I was actually shocked when the ship wrecked, Adol was thrown overboard, and when the adventure began. I was curious when I took my first steps. I was enticed when the animated intro started up. I was entranced when the title theme began, and I was underwhelmed when I began playing.
What? Underwhelmed? You just spent 5 minutes hyping it up. Underwhelmed?
Yes. Underwhelmed. I definitely hyped myself up way too much for this game because in the kindest of ways I can put this, the game's beginning is kind of boring. I was surprised by the lack of a guard button, however. In combat, when enemies attack, you have two ways of countering: evading at the perfect moment or activating your special attack at the perfect moment. One will slow the enemy down, grant you temporary invulnerability, and allow you time to think. The other will allow you temporary invulnerability, make your attacks all criticals, and fill your super attack meter for each strike with a special attack. It's fucking awesome and encourages quick, inventive use of every system at your fingertips. Beyond that, the game began to feel very generic. I was settled in for another mashup of adventure gaming ideas which, thankfully, lacked a stamina bar. And then, it happened.
What? You got up, touched grass, decided Hyper Light Drifter is the better game?
No. A character died. You see, Ys 8 takes place on an island, and it's your job to rescue the castaways. Every one of them serves a specific purpose. Some of them become healers and doctors, others become blacksmiths or armor makers. Captain Barbaros becomes the camp's leader. He blames himself for the shipwreck and miraculously survived. I even suspected he did this on purpose as the first few hours of the game took place. But he's killed, like, really dead. He fell into a trap, was struck a fatal blow, and died in Adol's arms. I was stunned. It was at that moment Ys 8 settled into my soul. I had to find out what the fuck just happened. I had to get off the island. This band of castaways was no longer just that, they became survivors to me. I took the opportunity to begin being more thorough with map exploration, enemy fights, and item usage, because this game is now playing for fucking keeps.
Are those dinning dinosaurs?
Yes. This game will instantly force care and concern after the captain dies because you no longer have a strong, confident leader taking charge in the camp. He passes his leadership and dream of leaving the island to Adol, but he was the captain. He was an imposing stonewall character that would throw down his life before letting any castaway fall victim to anything. Then he did, and beyond that, dinosaurs showed up. But that's one of the beautiful things I found in Ys 8. This game proudly walks the line between fantasy setting, fantasy characters, and fantasy setting, believable characters, with the stories that connect and intertwine between the castaways and the fucking dinosaurs and their origin. You could believe a family would start in the middle of a tragedy, people would become full of disdain at their situation, and things would seem hopeless. On the other side of that, dinosaurs, scary squid monsters, giant terrifying plants, and an end-of-the-world scenario that only an anime could have pulled off believably at one point. Ys 8 caught me with its story, its gameplay, its exploration, its combat, and something I really wasn't expecting: the music. Give a listen to Sunshine Coastline. This is the very first track you hear when you gain control. This is the first track you hear when you leave the castaway camp. This is the music that plays exploring this beach. It still makes my hair stand up on end.
I think I would pay you all of my money to watch your hair stand up on end.
This music still sends chills down my spine while exploring, fighting monsters, and opening treasure chests. I did not expect JDK Band to knock this out of the park like they did in Oath and Felghana. I don't know why I didn't expect that, but shit man, I was hooked. I was absolutely 100% in for whatever this game had. Everything and anything. I was no longer interested in completing every quest, fighting every boss, and satisfying this fat fuck. It became my career. This is the one game in the last decade or so of gaming that I will absolutely sit down and say, yeah, 60 hours is about average for this game, with no hint of sarcasm or ire, because that is exactly how long this game needed to be. This is exactly how long I wanted to be here. I didn't care how many mystical, magical things this game had. I don't care it forever destroyed my enjoyment of the word psyche, or how much I really dislike Hummel.
I like his hat.
Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana, which I mispronounced for months as Lamacrosa, is my game, man. It's the game to me. While it is not the best game ever, nor is it even close to perfect, it's one of my absolute favorites. It was my introduction to Falcom games as a whole. I bought and played Ys 9, Ys Origin, Memories of Calcutta. I own Ark of Nepishtim on PS2, and the first 3 Ys games on a reproduction card on the NES. This game series has an epic history of entries that I'm actively hunting down because Adol's adventures entice me so much. It inspired me to try Nayuta, Boundless Trails on the Switch, which is still entertaining me as I chip away at it. Ys 8 is what introduced me to another world of game series, characters, companies, publishers, developers, and worlds. I am absolutely amazed at how well it has aged, how my high-held hopes about it haven't wavered, and the friends and family I've been able to share this game and this series with. No, you don't have to love this game too, neither do they, but sharing it only enhances my love for it. I get to share this incredible journey with more people. They too get to see the moments where the story kicks off, the music kicks in, and meet Adol the same way we all probably did, falling off a ship of some kind or losing his memories.
Well, that was a lot of passion. Be sure to wash it off before you go home, everyone.
Today I'll be doing an honorable mention game starting with the letter D.
D.
For Dead Cells. Oh wow, a roguelike on our list. How original. I can feel your judgmental eyes, and I get it, but this one is above most of them. Dead Cells has to be one of the most evolved roguelites/likes to exist on the market right now or ever. You have how it started, this vanilla roguelike that you can make much harder by using the boss cell system over and over as you beat the game within each difficulty. There wasn't much here. Some variation in the levels, enemies, and how you encounter them, but within a few plays you could see the whole game without much frustration. More than I was willing to put in, but still. Then you have this variation of Dead Cells that comes a few updates later that adds provides new monsters, new enemies, new bosses, and new blueprints, which are these costumes and weapons you can pump cells into so you can wear the former and encounter the latter on your runs. I only ever pump one less than the number needed for most of these because I don't want to encounter crap weapons in my runs. There was a lot of new here. This was the version I played the most and attempted to learn. I got the most unlocks here while I figured out how and where certain keys were, and where the power-ups that allowed you more healing were located. This was becoming a really good game that I enjoyed playing way more than the release version while I unlocked costumes and was able to beat my favorite boss in the game, the Giant, for the first time. It was awesome. I have that moment stapled to my brain forever. Finally, you have the variation of Dead Cells that exists today. This is the most inclusive roguelike I have played so far in my life. Not only does it offer difficulty options for those who like to torture themselves, it also offers options for those who don't hate themselves called Aspect. Sure, these prevent you from unlocking new boss cells or flawless boss achievements, but those aren't needed anyway. Aspects, which you can equip at the beginning of each run, will make the game much easier for you, and are one of my favorite parts of Dead Cells. Seriously, these elevated Dead Cells is something I would recommend anyone play, even if you've never played a roguelite/like before. More than the fun gameplay, more than the enemy boss and level variety, the aspects are the thing that should invite you into this game, wrap you in a warm blanket, and comfort you as you slam things into walls and destroy doors. Aspects grant abilities like healing you when standing in poison water or gas, healing you for every hit against a bleeding target, offering an additional cursed chest for each encountered biome, causing slam attacks to do 400% more damage to enemies, one of the best things this game lets you do, and more. There are quite a few of these, and I wish more were added, but these are definitely the main reason I would recommend checking this game out. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some enemies to punish with one of the dozens of awesome weapons in this game, like this one, or this one, or this one! Today I'll be talking about an honorable mention game starting with the letter H. H. For Henry Hatsworth and the Puzzling Adventure. The thing I hail as the one thing EA has ever done correctly. On the outside, Henry Hatsworth is your regular old platformer on the DS where you play as an adventuring mustached man named Henry Hatsworth as he searches for the mysteries of the world. He has a sword to slap and bounce enemies with, a mustache to intimidate you with, and legs with which to jump. The game has an enjoyable soundtrack, several levels to enjoy and tolerate moving through, unlockable abilities to find, and a variety of enemies and bosses to take down. It's a competent little platformer. Then, it gets complicated. And by complicated, I mean fucking awesome. My little kid brain was absolutely pickled by the contrast between what's going on between the top and bottom screens in this game. On top, there's the boing boing slap slap adventure game you and Henry are on. On the bottom screen, there's this strange matching color puzzle thing that goes on. As you play the game, these blocks slowly climb toward the top screen of your system. Every enemy you defeat, some items you find, and even extra lives will sometimes invade the bottom screen, and it's up to you to match enough of the same color blocks to get rid of them for good. If the evil enemy blocks reach to the top screen, they'll join Henry on the field and they'll attempt to attack you in their new blocky form. How interesting. This mechanic was definitely not utilized to its full potential. I always thought a mechanic where you let a block reach the top so you can utilize them on the field would be interesting. It never got that far though. Every time you match at least 3 of the same color blocks, some energy will collect on the right side of the bottom screen. Filling the bar once will allow Henry access to his younger self, which will do more damage, has more HP, and looks more agile. If you fill the bar a second time, the best thing in the game happens. The absolute best. I haven't lied to you yet. So here it is. Goddamn robot suit. Epic robot suit theme. This suit is invincible and will last as long as the energy on the right side of the bottom screen does. This is the best part of the game. You can activate it whenever you have the energy. I highly recommend doing it during boss fights or when the game locks you into a slappy meal, but that's up to you. Matching blocks can have a lot of different effects beyond those I've already discussed. In addition to activating items, healing you, setting enemies to the Shadow Realm, and letting you activate T-Time, you can increase the power of your gun's projectiles. If you shoot your gun, yes, your gun, and the projectile is still on the top screen when you activate the puzzle realm of the bottom screen, you can increase the power of the on-screen projectile up to 3 times. You can also perform a beam attack, solve puzzles, blah blah blah, but the robot suit is where it's at. This game, even now, is just a lot of fun to play. It has a blend of on-screen platforming action that is really fun, varied, and gains new dynamics and elements as you play, as well as the puzzle section of the bottom screen. This may not be a perfect DS game, but it is a lot of fun. The best thing EA has ever put into the world by a long shot. I highly recommend checking this game out. Enjoy your tea time, everyone. And he left me alone at the microphone for a few minutes, which means I'm going to talk about another one of our honorable mention games. This time starting with C. C for Castlevania Order of Ecclesia. To start, this game features a fucking badass female protagonist that kicks all the monster ass. She absorbs enemy souls with the scary, complicated tattoo on her back. She can utilize one weapon per hand, combine them into some awesome attacks, and was definitely my pick for who should get a story next in the animated Castlevania series. Seriously, her story is my favorite. She even appears in the Dead Cells Castlevania DLC. This game is not only one of my favorite anything-vania games, but one of my favorite games ever. For more than the exploration elements that make this game easy to return to because the secrets and new paths you find are just as fun to find the first as much as the 7th and 8th, even more than the collectible powers that Shinoa can absorb and use against enemies. Lepish being the best because what's better than a giant stone fist? Still, even more than the characters you meet, can befriend, and earn rewards from as you bring things enemies drop to them. Even more than the cats you can find and collect. Order of Ecclesia stands near the top of my list because how, even playing it now, after beating it 7 or 8 times in my life, I still need a guide to find some of the items needed for progress. Now this may not seem like a point in its favor, but hear me out. This is a game in which you have to find every person that lives in a village because they are all required to activate a level in the game, but sometimes I can't remember where they all are. And this leads me down a small rabbit hole of secret seeking in this game. Destructible walls with different helpful equipables behind them. Treasure chests I may have missed. I do yearn for the days when paper guides were still released for games we love, but I do derive a certain sense of joy having to consult a game facts or other comprehensive guide to bring me through this game again. It's like a road I don't remember walking down, but every time I do, I rediscover these bits and pieces I really do enjoy about it. I get to rediscover the reasons I enjoyed those bits as well, or remember why I did not like those pieces. In addition, boss strats are important too, because some of these bosses are straight up ridiculous. I always want tips on some of these. Plus, weapon combinations. There is no shortage of different weapons you can use in this game. Doubling up the same ones will cause your special attack to be some form of bigger version of the individual ones, but combining different ones, the effects can be quite insane. Check out these different elemental effects when combining elemental glyphs with any weapon. Or, what? Universitas when combining light and dark. Wow, I didn't know this was here. There are a lot of combinations. It's very cool to discover these even years after playing this game for the first time. I'll never get tired of the expanding weapon, item, armor, and other inventories for the shop in the main village as you complete their quests. Most villagers will give you up to 3 side quests to complete. Some of them improve the shops they run, the armor they can forge, the weapons they sell, and even the food you can buy in the general store. That's so cool. It gives you reasons to talk to everyone, get to know their stories, get attached, and help them as you progress through the game. This is a very good game. You even get to play as one of the villains if you beat the game normally. He's not fun to play, but still highly recommended that you try him at least once. Remember to lapiste your enemies, everyone. Andy drank a very large cup of shut the f up for a bit so I could do another honorable mention game. This time starting with M. M. For
Metopia?
Metopia. The love and admiration we have for this game is entirely thanks to the Gateway to Drillbit community. You see, Andy and I organized a whole campaign around donations of bits to our adventure for viewers to insert themselves into different roles in our adventure. For certain amounts of bits, you could become an NPC, nickname someone, change our class, make us gamble, or become one of our several adventuring buddies. We created a mismatched team of flowers, mages, fighter classes, singers, and more. Plus, our classes kept changing, so our party dynamic was very liquid. But one of the beautiful things about Metopia is the interaction system. You see, every once in a while, one of your party will do something, and depending on the relationship with another party member, something might happen. They may share a healing banana they pulled out of thin air with them. They may give them the cold shoulder when they fall down while running through the linear caves and pathways. They may get jealous when you're sleeping in a room with a different party member. There are around 20 unique interactions that any of your party members can have with other members, but some of these are really helpful. They can power up attacks, increase the effectiveness of healing magic, cheat death, and more. I bring this up because the strength of each character's job was a level stapled to that job. So if you went from a warrior level 20 to a flower level 1, your stats fell, your attack plummeted, and your HP is quartered. But if you have strong relationships with your fellow members of the fighting party, that doesn't matter much because they'll protect you, attack with you, heal you, and help you. You basically built a party of budding friends, and our community strengthened these bonds by making a party different members of the community. We all got to add to and experience the lukewarm adventure that is Metopia, but we made it our own, which created something really fucking special. We should do this again someday because it is still one of my favorite playthroughs we've ever done. This is the last time we can call on one of our honorable mentions. So here it is, and it begins with Z.
Zed.
It's not how you say it. For The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Oh, so you're just doing this because of the
Randomizers. Exclusively the randomizers, yes. You see, Ocarina of Time is a fine game. A complete adventure with a story you can get way too involved in and argue about the meanings of until your lungs collapse. I didn't think much of it after having played other better and worse Zelda games in my life and other games in general. Ocarina of Time may have once been the pinnacle of 3D travel, plot, and controls, but it is no longer, and I never looked at it as such. It is a baseline by which I judge most other games in the genre.
Until I told you about randomizers.
Andy says it like a bad thing, like he combined my two favorite things, an addiction to safe and free random chance that has a new effect every time you look at it, and middle-of-the-road games I know the layout of fairly well. You did this to me, you know.
It's one of my 2 lifelong regrets.
Anyway, Andy taught me of and built me a randomizer for Ocarina of Time. I didn't know this was possible, or at all interesting, but I was immediately in love. We all know what randomizers are, but at the time, I didn't. I didn't know Skulltulas could hold music or weapons in their stupid bodies. I didn't know on-field rupees could be replaced with essential resources. I didn't know bosses could vomit out junk instead of the heavily relied upon heart containers. This was all new to me and all so awesome. Andy even tricked me into buying an EverDrive so we could sneak a randomized ROM onto original hardware.
I also built you a custom Mario Party 2 board with a swath of new controls and mechanics, you know, but we never talk about that.
Yeah, but this isn't about you yet. We're getting to that. You see, in my travels through life and randomized Ocarina of Time seeds, I discovered a certain boredom that began to set in. This needed another layer. This needed something completely off the rocks insane that would increase my love of randomizers even further than before. This needed more players.
Why did you glue my hands to a controller?
I eventually discovered that you can play Ocarina of Time randomizers with friends. I'm not sure how many other people can join the very same world and hunt items with you, fight bosses nearby you, and react to similarly placed enemies and hazards together, but one day I'd like to find out. That blew my still developing mind.
You learned of this 2 years ago and you're 30. What part of your brain is still developing?
My sense to not shove you into the next room. I bring these up because I have played many a randomizer using these multiplayer hacks and patches, not only with Andy, but with members of the G2D community as well. We spend 2 or 3 nights striking down Skulltulas and completing reachable dungeons in search of the end of the game. Of course, ModLoader hates that we use its very specific service to play this game, and it crashes right before the end every single time, but we still have more fun than any human could alone in this game. There are so many memorable moments of us playing not only an Ocarina of Time randomizer together, but Majora's Mask as well. We attempted some other multiplayer ones, but those aren't as stable.
For the record, I don't like randomizers.
That's why you're sitting on a chair and I'm standing and being excited.
I'm not sitting by choice. I think you used leftover cheese to stick me to this.
I may have. Anyway, these randomizers deserve a special shout out under the umbrella of Ocarina of Time because they are their own breed of an excellent time to be had with friends. We even involve other community members to be our guiding fairy. We give them the spoiler log and have them guide us to important weapons and upgrades we need to defeat Ganondorf. It really has elevated the feelings I have for Ocarina of Time over our several randomizers. It's still a very okay game on its own, but when mixed with items that can be anywhere and held by anyone, friends who can have their character model be almost anything, and enemy placements that don't exactly sync up on more than one game world, you have a recipe for chaos. Chaos and fun.
Z.
4.
The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. I'm gonna tell you guys a little secret. Lean in close. I'm gonna tell you how to make me cry. I just tried this out too, and it still works. There's this video called the Wind Waker Queen Zelda Edition on YouTube. It's Queen's performance of Bohemian Rhapsody at Wembley Stadium, with Wind Waker footage carefully edited to sync up with the lyrics and tempo. I recommend watching it yourself. Every time I watch this video, my composition melts. Freddie Mercury, one of the most beautiful artists to have ever been clad in human flesh, performing a timeless opus using the utmost of his heart and soul, surrounded by nearly 100,000 people chanting in unison. And Wind Waker, the most expressive Zelda game, portraying hundreds of emotions over the course of a dramatic tale and dozens of memorable characters. And the editor of the video, who I'm less familiar with, but they did do a really good job taking Wind Waker's cutscenes and stylishly matching it up with Queen. Seeing it all together in this video fills my heart to bursting. Bohemian Rhapsody is such a great song, and Wind Waker is such a great game. It's incredible how it can be this bright, beautiful game that's sunny and wide-eyed, but tells a story of a horrifying apocalypse that destroys an entire civilization and leaves thousands of hopeless people to die. The prologue always manages to grab hold of my imagination, not just because it's a direct continuation of Ocarina of Time's ending, but because it's so shocking. The people of Hyrule are left with no choice but to surrender their fates to chance. They're gambling on the very idea of hope. When I was a kid playing this for the first time, this was simply fiction. Dang, what a shame, those poor people. But now that I'm an adult and I have the wherewithal to see the planet steadily slip towards destruction, leaving your life to chance like that is oddly relatable. Wind Waker was the first time I got fascinated by a game's development. I'd go online and read about some newly discovered unused assets, testing rooms, and Knuckle. Since Wind Waker's undersea Hyrule field is a pretty vast area with such a small playable region, I used to theorize for hours about what was supposed to be there, or what certain landmarks meant. And there's the Great Sea itself. I used to think a 7x7 grid was such a strange choice, and that there had to be more islands out there if you could just keep sailing. So finding out that there's unused islands in the game's code blew my mind. The sea chart only maps the 49 primary landmasses, and everything else is up to you to discover. Because of that, you often find yourself just sailing along with a mission in mind, and then something unexpected appears on the horizon. As it gets closer, you try to puzzle together what it could be, and if it'd be even worth the effort pursuing. Are there enemies? Do you have the resources to handle them? Do they have treasure? Every grid space has its own little things to check out and do. You can have a super efficient playthrough where you handle everything in a Fibonacci-like sweep, or just improvise and carry on as you do. Personally, I prefer to improvise, because that leads to Wind Waker's best strength: adventure. The word adventure gets a bit diluted in the gaming world, I feel, since it's used to describe just about any situation where a character starts in one place and ends up in another. Very rarely does it apply quite like it does to Wind Waker. There's you, alone, sailing into literally uncharted seas, finding foe and friend alike, coming ashore on islands you've never been to before so you can save the family you might never see again. And though I do say you're alone in this game, strangely enough, this is the least isolated I've ever felt in a Zelda game. Yeah, even counting the game where Navi's breathing down your neck, I feel more alone there than in Wind Waker. Because as you go through the story, Link makes friends that have a notable, tangible impact on the narrative and the gameplay. The pirates give Link a tutorial, the spoils bag, and bombs. Valoo and the Rito rescue Link and Tetra. Medley and Makar help out with their respective dungeons and briefly sail along with you. Even in an ocean this vast and islands this disparate, the situation is dire enough for everyone to make the trip over to help out. When it comes to the combat though, I'll be honest, I agree with the detractors. There's quite a bit of mashing the B button and waiting to press the A button. It is unfortunate, but hey, it still works. But I don't think anyone can disagree that picking up enemy weapons, with no durability caveat, is the coolest thing. You come upon a Darknut wielding a sword big enough to be your bed, and your first thought is, that's gonna be mine in a minute. There are a lot of moments while playing Wind Waker where I'm shocked by how big the world is in comparison to Link. Like, the enemies are so huge, and the island landscapes are wide open and massive. Other Zelda games have creatures and worlds that feel to scale with Link, but Wind Waker makes Link look like an insect against everything around him. He really does feel like a child striking out on his own for the very first time, and he's small and confused, but he's just doing his best. With that in mind, Wind Waker's art direction has always been so inspiring to me, sometimes I can barely contain myself. With the big eyes, the heavy eyebrows that are visible through hair, the high contrast colors, and the proportions that give every character a recognizable silhouette, it all collects together and explodes in my brain like a hormone. And the cinematics use these strengths to their fullest, boosting the drama of certain moments with exquisitely subtle movements, as well as heightening comedic bits with rapid accelerations. One of the reasons I prefer the GameCube original over the HD version, and no, I'm not kidding about this, is the moment Link sees his grandma from Tetra's ship. On the GameCube, with its tiny screen resolution, you can hardly even tell she's there. You have to believe she's there, just like Link does. It's honestly pretty amazing to me how many times I've played Wind Waker, and yet I haven't done everything in it yet. Only recently I got that cable that hooks a GBA to the GameCube so I can properly use the Tingle Tuner, and then got the Tingle statues with James. He used bombs to blow me up absolutely every chance he got. But the point is, I finally got those statues, but I still never completed the Nintendo gallery, cause I mean, who has? That's a lot of work. I did do Zunari's trading sequence, and the Savage Labyrinth the second time, and the Forest Water quest, but I've never taken the Forest Water into the Forbidden Woods to one-hit kill Calidemos. I'd love to do it all someday. Wind Waker has affected so much of me as a person. I wanted to make expressive characters, and now I do. I wanted to do funny voices like Beetle and Old Man Ho-Ho, and now I do. I wanted to dress colorfully and have weird proportions like Link, and now I do. I wanted to own a bunch of figurines like in the Nintendo gallery, and now I do. I wanted to live life, going on adventures and meeting people to trade inspirations with, and at some point sail off to the horizon to my next new beginning. And now, adieu.
And with that,
I don't know if he's coming back. Hope he does. We have to figure out what the heck we're doing next year for anime. What game starting with Z do you hold near and dear to your heart? Let us know in the comments. Be sure to compose your own lists of games if you want as well. We'll see you soon for what we have planned next.